Welcome, brave souls, to another journey into the shadowed corners of Nevada. Beyond the bright lights of Las Vegas and the vast deserts, there lies a darker history hidden behind abandoned walls, shuttered windows, and crumbling hallways. Some hospitals here were once places of hope and healing, but now they echo with cries of pain, whispered warnings, and restless spirits that never left. Tonight, we step inside the abandoned corridors of Nevada's haunted hospitals, where the smell of antiseptic lingers in the air, wheelchairs move on their own, and shadowy figures roam the halls. These are the 25 haunted hospitals in Nevada that are still abandoned. Southern Nevada Hospital, located on the outskirts of Las Vegas, stands as a silent relic of a once bustling medical facility. Its sprawling corridors, empty patient rooms, and crumbling infrastructure tell a story of care, illness, and abandonment. Closed for decades, the hospital has gained a reputation for being one of the most haunted locations in the area, drawing paranormal enthusiasts, urban explorers, and thrill seekers eager to witness its spectral activity firsthand. The experiences reported within its walls are chilling. Phantom footsteps echoing through deserted hallways, doors that slam without warning, faint cries drifting from empty rooms, and shadowy figures that vanish when approached. These occurrences suggest that Southern Nevada Hospital is more than just a decaying building, is a repository of restless spirits, lingering from both tragedy and time. The most common reports from visitors involve phantom footsteps. Those brave enough to explore the hospital's long corridors often hear rhythmic, deliberate steps following them more, sometimes leading them down hallways, only to vanish at the next corner. One urban explorer described walking down a narrow corridor toward the old surgical wing when he distinctly heard the sound of shoes shuffling behind him. He spun around, expecting to see another explorer, but the hallway was empty. The sound persisted, fading gradually, leaving him with a sense of dread and the undeniable impression that the hospital itself was alive with unseen activity. These footsteps are often accompanied by a sensation of being watched, a prickling awareness that some unseen presence is tracking every movement. Doors slamming without cause are another hallmark of the hospital's haunted reputation. Visitors frequently report heavy doors to patient rooms or storage areas closing suddenly, sometimes with enough force to startle anyone nearby. One team of paranormal investigators recounted standing in a dimly lit corridor while discussing equipment when a door at the far end of the hall banged shut with a loud, reverberating crash. No wind, no mechanical malfunction, and no human presence could explain the sound. Repeated incidents like this have led many to believe that spirits trapped within the hospital are attempting to communicate or perhaps reenact moments of fear, anger, or confusion from their time among the living. Faint cries and whispers echoing from empty patient rooms add to the chilling atmosphere. Visitors have reported hearing soft, plaintive sounds of distress emanating from rooms that have long been stripped of beds, medical instruments, and personal belongings. One photographer, exploring the third floor, recalled hearing the faint sobbing of a child, followed by the whispered voice of a woman calling out a name. When he followed the sounds, the rooms were completely empty, silent, except for the distant hum of the building settling. These auditory phenomena suggest that the emotional residue of past patients and their caregivers may linger. Trapped in the hospital, long after life has moved on, shadowy figures are among the most unnerving reports. Witnesses frequently describe seeing dark shapes at the ends of hallways, lingering near stairwells, or peering from partially opened doors. These figures often vanish the moment someone approaches, leaving only an eerie emptiness and a cold draft in their place. One visitor recounted standing at the top of a staircase when a shadowy figure appeared at the far end of the hallway. He attempted to call out, but as he took a step forward, the figure disappeared into the darkness, leaving an oppressive sense of presence behind. These fleeting glimpses reinforce the idea that the hospital is a threshold between the living and the dead, where spirits remain tethered to the locations of their final days. Temperature anomalies frequently accompany these experiences. Cold spots appear suddenly in the middle of otherwise stagnant air, often near locations where footsteps, whispers, or shadowy figures have been reported. Visitors report a chilling drop in temperature in hallways and rooms, creating goosebumps and a sense of vulnerability. One paranormal team noted a cold draft in the old maternity ward as they recorded audio, coinciding with the sound of faint, childlike laughter. These cold spots enhance the sensation that unseen presences are actively inhabiting the hospital, manifesting physically in ways that the living can feel. The hospital's abandoned architecture magnifies these phenomena. Long, narrow hallways, high ceilings, and peeling walls create echoes that can carry sound unnaturally, making whispers, footsteps, and slamming doors resonate throughout the building. Shadows are cast by broken windows, exposed pipes, and fractured lighting, creating illusions of movement and making fleeting figures appear at the edges of vision. Over decades, the emotional energy of patients, staff, and visitors seems to have imprinted itself on the building, creating a residual haunting that continues to disturb those who enter. Paranormal investigators have documented a variety of phenomena within Southern Nevada Hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting shapes moving down hallways and disappearing into walls. Audio recordings reveal footsteps, whispers, and cries that cannot be attributed to any living presence. Temperature readings confirm sudden cold spots, often coinciding with visual or auditory phenomena. Investigators suggest that these manifestations are tied to the hospital's long history, including deaths, emergencies, and the intense emotions of both patients and medical staff who worked within its walls. Visitors also experience these presences firsthand. Guests exploring the hospital late at night report the same consistent phenomena: shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, doors slamming, sudden chills, and faint cries from empty rooms. One urban explorer described standing in a room once used for patient care when he heard a whisper close to his ear, saying a single word: "Leave." When he turned, no one was there. Others have reported glimpsing a figure in a nurse's uniform, standing silently at the end of a hallway, vanishing when approached. Despite its long abandonment, Southern Nevada Hospital continues to attract those drawn to its paranormal reputation. Staff from investigative groups, thrill seekers, and historians come to document the phenomena and explore the decaying structure. Many treat the hauntings with respect, understanding that the spirits reported here may be tethered to unfinished business or to the intense emotions of life and death experienced within the hospital. St. Mary's Hospital in Reno, Nevada, stands as a solemn reminder of a past era. Once a busy medical center, the hospital provided care to countless patients and employed a dedicated staff of doctors, nurses, and support personnel. Decades later, the building sits abandoned, its empty halls and decaying infrastructure creating a haunting silhouette against the Nevada skyline. Though the hospital is no longer in operation, it has developed a reputation for paranormal activity, drawing both urban explorers and paranormal investigators eager to document its spectral phenomena. Reports from those who enter the hospital consistently describe shadowy figures, unexplained cold spots, voices calling out names, and the sensation of unseen presences brushing past in patient rooms and corridors, suggesting that the spirits of the past remain tethered to the building. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported occurrences at St. Mary's Hospital. Visitors often see indistinct silhouettes moving through hallways, standing in doorways, or vanishing around corners. These figures are rarely fully formed, often appearing as dark, shifting shapes that vanish when approached. One paranormal investigator described walking through the former maternity ward when he glimpsed a figure at the end of the corridor, seemingly waiting. As he moved closer, the figure melted into the shadows, leaving behind only an eerie stillness and a sensation of being watched. Many believe these apparitions are the lingering spirits of patients, staff, or visitors who never left, trapped within the hospital by trauma, memory, or unfinished business. Phantom voices and whispers are another hallmark of the hospital's hauntings. Visitors have reported hearing faint calls for help, whispers of names, or snippets of conversation in empty corridors. One urban explorer recalled entering a long-abandoned patient room and hearing a soft, sorrowful voice calling out, "Eleanor." Are you there? The sound seemed to echo from every corner, yet no one was present. Other reports include the soft murmur of nurses giving instructions, or the hushed conversations of doctors and patients replaying decades-old interactions. These auditory phenomena create a chilling sense that the hospital is a living record of its past, replaying echoes of the countless lives that once passed through its halls. Cold spots are a frequent accompaniment to these experiences. Visitors often report sudden drops in temperature, particularly in areas associated with heavy activity during the hospital's operational years, such as patient wards, surgical rooms, and hallways near the old nurse stations. One investigator recalled entering a former intensive care unit when a cold draft swept across the room. Despite the absence of any open windows or ventilation, the drop was abrupt and intense, leaving a physical chill and reinforcing the feeling of an unseen presence nearby. These cold spots often coincide with visual or auditory phenomena, amplifying the sense of something beyond the ordinary inhabiting the hospital. The sensation of unseen hands brushing past visitors is another chilling feature of St. Mary's paranormal activity. Guests exploring patient rooms or corridors have reported the feeling of a presence making physical contact, as if invisible hands are reaching out to touch, guide, or warn. One visitor recounted standing in a hallway when a sudden brushing sensation on her arm caused her to step back in shock. No one was nearby, yet the contact felt unmistakable. These tactile experiences create a deeply personal and unsettling connection to the hospital's history, suggesting that the spirits retain some physical connection to the world they once knew. Doors slamming or creaking open and shut without explanation are also commonly reported. Visitors often hear heavy doors in patient wards, storage rooms, or old administrative areas move on their own. One urban explorer recalled pausing to take photographs in an abandoned hallway when a door at the far end swung open and then slammed shut, startling him and sending a shiver down his spine. These movements, combined with other phenomena, contribute to the sense that the hospital remains inhabited, with unseen presences interacting with the environment in ways reminiscent of past activity. The hospital's architecture amplifies these experiences. Long, narrow hallways, high ceilings, and multiple small patient rooms create a setting where echoes, shadows, and light interact in ways that can heighten fear and perception. Faded linoleum floors, peeling paint, and broken windows cast strange patterns of light and shadow, making fleeting figures appear more distinct and contributing to the sense of movement where none exists. The residual energy of decades of medical care, moments of joy, fear, grief, and recovery seems to linger in the very walls, manifesting as paranormal activity that continues to unsettle those who enter. Paranormal investigators have documented a range of unusual activity at St. Mary's Hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting figures moving through hallways and patient rooms. Audio equipment has recorded voices calling names, murmurs of conversation, and faint cries of distress. Temperature sensors confirm sudden cold spots, often coinciding with visual or auditory phenomena. Many investigators suggest these manifestations are tied to the hospital's long history of care and tragedy, with spirits bound to the locations where their lives and work were most intense. Visitors occasionally experience these presences firsthand. Guests exploring the hospital report seeing shadowy figures at the end of hallways, hearing names called from empty rooms, feeling cold drafts, and sensing unseen hands brushing past them. One visitor described pausing in a deserted patient room when a soft whisper said, "Help me," echoing as though through the walls themselves. Others report glimpsing a figure in a nurse's uniform standing silently near old equipment, vanishing the moment they tried to approach. These experiences are consistent across decades, suggesting the hospital is a nexus of enduring spiritual activity. Despite its abandonment, St. Mary's Hospital continues to attract curiosity and exploration. Paranormal enthusiasts, historians, and thrill-seekers enter its halls to document and understand its haunting reputation. Many treat the building with respect, understanding that the spirits reported here may be tethered to the intense emotions and experiences of life, illness, and care. Desert Valley Medical Center in Paranormal, Nevada, sits as a silent monument to abrupt endings and unfinished stories. Once a busy hospital providing care to countless patients, it closed its doors suddenly, leaving hallways, patient rooms, and medical equipment abandoned as if frozen in time. Since its closure, the sprawling facility has gained a reputation as one of the most haunted locations in the area. Paranormal investigators, urban explorers, and locals alike report unsettling phenomena: phantom heart monitors, beeping lights flickering with no electrical cause, shadowy figures darting around corners, and an unusual energy that seems to linger, especially in the emergency room. These experiences suggest that the spirits of those who lived and worked here remain tethered to the hospital, replaying moments of urgency, fear, and human emotion long after the last patient left. Among the most frequently reported phenomena at Desert Valley Medical Center are phantom sounds. Visitors and investigators have repeatedly described hearing the rhythmic beeping of heart monitors and the distant hum of medical equipment in rooms long abandoned. One paranormal investigator recounted exploring the intensive care wing when she distinctly heard the rapid, irregular beeping of a heart monitor coming from a patient room with no electricity. As she approached the source, the sound stopped abruptly, leaving an unsettling silence. Other auditory experiences include the faint murmur of nurses giving instructions, the distant clatter of medical carts, and echoes of hurried footsteps that seem to follow visitors down the long hallways. These sounds create the impression that the hospital remains alive with activity, replaying fragments of its past in ways the living can perceive. Lights flickering without cause are another hallmark of the haunting at Desert Valley. During late-night explorations, overhead fluorescent lights, emergency exit signs, and medical lamps have been reported to flash, dim, or glow intermittently despite being disconnected from power. One visitor described walking through the surgical wing when the lights above her flickered rapidly, casting elongated shadows across the walls. At the same moment, a shadowy figure appeared at the far end of the hall, only to vanish as she moved closer. Such incidents suggest that the spirits present at the hospital may interact with the environment, using light as a means of manifesting their presence, or perhaps communicating the lingering tension of the hospital's abrupt closure. Shadowy figures are among the most unnerving experiences reported. Visitors often see dark shapes moving quickly around corners, disappearing into doorways, or standing motionless at the end of hallways. These apparitions are usually indistinct, glimpsed only briefly, and vanish when approached. One urban explorer recounted standing near the emergency room entrance when a tall, shadowy figure appeared in the corner of his vision. As he turned to look directly, it faded into the darkness, leaving only a palpable sense of presence. Many believe these figures are spirits of former patients, staff, or even emergency responders who remain tied to the hospital, replaying moments of urgency, fear, and care that were never fully resolved. The emergency room, in particular, is said to be a hotspot for paranormal activity. Reports of unexplained sounds, cold drafts, and visual phenomena are especially common in this area. Visitors have heard the rush of movement as if medical personnel were responding to emergencies, only to find the room empty. Some have reported the faint smell of antiseptic or the distinct scent of hospital corridors, as if the area itself retained the memories of its purpose. One investigator described hearing a low, continuous beep, like an urgent alarm, coming from the abandoned trauma bay. Upon entering, there was no equipment running. Yet the sound persisted for several moments, accompanied by a chilling sensation of being watched. Cold spots and temperature anomalies often accompany these phenomena. Visitors frequently experience sudden drops in temperature in hallways, patient rooms, and near old equipment, often in conjunction with phantom footsteps, voices, or visual apparitions. One explorer reported walking down a deserted corridor when a frigid breeze swept past, despite all windows and doors being sealed. At the same moment, he felt an invisible presence near him, amplifying the sense of unease and suggesting that unseen forces were interacting directly with the physical environment. The abandoned architecture of Desert Valley Medical Center enhances these haunting experiences. Long hallways, empty patient rooms, high ceilings, and shadow-filled corners create an ideal setting for echoes, flickering lights, and illusions of movement. Peeling paint, broken tiles, and exposed wiring contribute to the unsettling atmosphere, allowing shadows to appear distorted and fleeting shapes to seem more tangible. Over decades of operation, the intense emotions of life, death, and care have imprinted themselves on the hospital, creating residual energy that manifests as paranormal activity. Paranormal investigators have documented these occurrences extensively. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting figures moving through hallways and rooms. Audio equipment has recorded phantom heartbeats, footsteps, and faint conversations in areas where no living person was present. Temperature sensors confirm sudden cold spots, often coinciding with visual or auditory phenomena. Many researchers suggest that the hospital's abrupt closure left a kind of emotional echo, binding spirits to the location, replaying unresolved moments of fear, urgency, and human connection. Visitors exploring Desert Valley Medical Center also report these manifestations firsthand. Guests often encounter shadowy figures at the ends of hallways, hear phantom heart monitor beeps, feel cold drafts, and experience the sensation of unseen presences brushing past. One visitor describes standing in the emergency room when a flickering light illuminated a figure moving toward her, only to vanish moments later. Another reported hearing faint cries for help and whispers calling patient names as he passed through the abandoned hallways, heightening the impression that the building retains the emotional residue of its history. Despite its long abandonment, Desert Valley Medical Center continues to draw those intrigued by its paranormal reputation. Paranormal enthusiasts, urban explorers, and historians venture into the hospital to document phenomena respecting the presence of spirits said to remain bound to the site. For many, the haunting of Desert Valley Medical Center is a reminder that some energies, emotions, and unfinished stories linger far longer than the living can perceive. Carson City General Hospital, once a bustling medical facility in Nevada's capital, now stands abandoned, its hallways silent and its rooms left to decay. Closed for decades, the hospital has become a magnet for ghost stories, drawing urban explorers, paranormal investigators, and thrill-seekers, hoping to witness the eerie phenomena reported within its walls. Though the building is empty of living staff and patients, countless visitors have shared chilling accounts of ghostly activity. Faint footsteps echoing down hallways, whispers emanating from vacant wards, apparitions in hospital gowns moving through the corridors, and cold drafts that seem to follow anyone daring to walk its abandoned rooms. For many, the hospital is not just an old building, it is a repository of lingering spirits, their presence tied to the intense experiences of life, illness, and death that once filled its halls. Among the most commonly reported phenomena are phantom footsteps. Visitors frequently describe hearing soft, rhythmic steps following them or approaching from distant corridors. One paranormal investigator recalled walking through a long hallway on the second floor when he heard the distinct sound of shoes scuffing across the floor behind him. Turning quickly, he found the corridor empty, yet the footsteps continued for a few more seconds before fading into silence. Many accounts suggest that these sounds are not random. They often correspond to areas where patient care was once intensive, such as the surgical wing or the maternity ward, hinting at echoes of the hospital's bustling past. Whispers and murmurs are another frequent occurrence. Empty wards and patient rooms have reportedly carried the sounds of conversation, instructions, or calls for help. One visitor recounted standing near a deserted nurse's station when she heard a soft voice calling, "Is anyone there?" The sound seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, echoing through adjacent rooms. Other explorers have reported hearing nurses giving directions, doctors conversing about treatments, and even patients softly pleading or calling out names. These auditory experiences create a sense that the hospital is replaying fragments of its history, preserving the moments of care, fear, and uncertainty that once defined the daily lives of those inside. Shadowy apparitions are perhaps the most unsettling of all. Numerous witnesses have described fleeting figures, dressed in hospital gowns, moving through hallways, appearing at the end of corridors, or standing silently in patient rooms. One urban explorer described seeing a figure in a gown, standing near a doorway, as though waiting for someone to pass. As he stepped closer, the figure dissolved into the shadows, leaving behind a palpable sense of presence. Others have reported seeing nurses' silhouettes moving past old supply rooms or doctors walking purposefully through abandoned corridors, only to vanish when approached. These visual manifestations suggest that the spirits of past patients and staff may remain bound to the locations where they spent their final moments or performed their duties. Cold drafts are a recurring feature throughout the hospital. Visitors often report sudden drops in temperature in areas where apparitions or phantom sounds are present. One investigator noted entering a room that once served as a pediatric ward, only to feel a frigid breeze sweep across the space, despite all windows and doors being tightly closed. The sensation often accompanies other phenomena, such as footsteps or whispers, reinforcing the impression that the building is not entirely empty. These cold spots leave a physical reminder of the unseen presences that inhabit the hospital, a chill that cuts through the warmth of the day and deepens the sense of unease. Doors moving seemingly on their own are also commonly reported. Heavy patient room doors, storage closets, and administrative offices have been observed opening or closing without any apparent cause. In one account, a group of paranormal enthusiasts were standing in a corridor when a door at the far end creaked open and then slammed shut violently. The sudden movement startled everyone present, yet no one was near the door, and no wind could account for the motion. These occurrences, combined with other sensory experiences, contribute to the eerie atmosphere that pervades the hospital. The architecture of Carson City General Hospital amplifies the haunting experiences. Long, narrow hallways, high ceilings, and rows of patient rooms create natural echoes that carry footsteps, whispers, and other sounds. Broken windows, peeling paint, and exposed wiring cast shadows and patterns that make fleeting figures seem more tangible. The residual emotional energy from years of births, illnesses, recoveries, and deaths seems to linger, interacting with the environment to create a heightened sense of unease and presence. Paranormal investigators have documented numerous phenomena throughout the hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting figures moving across hallways and patient rooms. Audio recorders have captured voices, whispers, and faint cries that cannot be attributed to living humans. Temperature sensors confirm sudden drops in heat, often in tandem with visual or auditory activity. Many experts suggest that the hauntings are tied to the intense emotions experienced in the hospital over decades, with spirits lingering in places of trauma, care, and human connection. Visitors also frequently experience these presences firsthand. Guests report shadowy figures appearing at the end of hallways, phantom footsteps following them, cold drafts moving with them from room to room, and faint whispers calling out names. One explorer described walking through the old surgical wing when he felt a cold hand brush against his arm. Turning quickly, he saw nothing, yet the sensation was undeniable. Another reported seeing the silhouette of a nurse moving silently along the corridor, vanishing when he attempted to approach. These encounters are consistent across different areas of the hospital and over decades of reports, suggesting a persistent and active spectral presence. Despite its long abandonment, Carson City General Hospital continues to attract visitors, both for its historical significance and its paranormal reputation. Urban explorers, paranormal investigators, and curious locals enter the building seeking evidence of its hauntings, often treating the experience with reverence for the lives that once filled the hospital. Boulder City Hospital in Nevada stands as a silent witness to decades of care, illness, and untold human stories. Once a hub of medical activity, it has long since been abandoned. Yet the building retains a reputation that continues to draw urban explorers, paranormal investigators, and locals intrigued by its haunted history. Over the years, countless visitors have reported encounters with shadowy figures, mysterious voices, sudden cold drafts, and the chilling sensation of unseen presences. The hospital's spectral activity is most pronounced in the corridors, patient wards, and former operating rooms, where the energy of past patients and staff seems to linger, replaying fragments of life and death in a place frozen by time. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Boulder City Hospital is the presence of shadowy figures. Visitors frequently describe seeing nurses in old-style uniforms gliding silently along the hallways, pausing near empty patient rooms, or disappearing abruptly around corners. These apparitions are often fleeting, glimpsed only for a moment, yet they leave a lasting impression. One paranormal investigator recalled walking through the maternity wing when he saw a figure in a nurse's uniform at the end of a long corridor. As he approached, the figure vanished, leaving behind a lingering chill and the unmistakable sense that someone or something was still watching. Other witnesses have reported doctors or staff figures moving through the administrative offices, their forms indistinct but eerily human in motion. Phantom voices are another hallmark of Boulder City Hospital's haunting. Empty rooms and deserted hallways are frequently filled with whispers, calls for help, and murmured conversations that seem to come from nowhere. One urban explorer described standing in an abandoned patient ward when he heard a soft, urgent voice call out, "Help me." The voice seemed to echo through the room, reverberating off the walls. Yet, when he investigated, no one was present. Others report hearing instructions being given as though nurses or doctors were attending to patients, snippets of conversations about treatments, and even the quiet sobbing of patients. These auditory experiences reinforce the sense that the hospital retains a memory of the lives once lived within its walls, replaying the moments of care, fear, and vulnerability for anyone sensitive enough to notice. Sudden drops in temperature are commonly reported by those exploring the facility. Visitors often experience cold spots in hallways, patient rooms, and especially near the former operating rooms. One investigator recalled entering a surgical suite and feeling a frigid gust sweep across the space. Despite all windows being closed, the chill was accompanied by the faint hum of phantom equipment, giving the impression that the operating room itself remembered the frantic energy of past surgeries. These cold drafts are often localized but intense, creating a physical reminder of the unseen presences that may linger in the hospital. The old operating rooms of Boulder City Hospital are often described as particularly oppressive. Several visitors report a heavy, almost tangible feeling pressing down on them as they enter these areas. Some have described the sensation as suffocating or constrictive, as though the weight of past trauma, surgeries, and loss is physically present. Shadowy figures sometimes appear in these rooms, standing silently by tables or disappearing into walls. Other witnesses recount the sensation of being watched or guided, as if the spirits of doctors, nurses, and patients continue to occupy the rooms where life-altering procedures once took place. Doors opening and closing without cause add another layer to the haunting. Heavy patient room doors, storage closets, and medical offices are often observed moving on their own. One group of visitors reported standing in a corridor when a door to a former operating suite creaked open and then slammed shut, startling them despite the absence of any drafts or physical interference. These seemingly purposeful movements of objects contribute to the sense that the hospital is inhabited by entities that interact with the environment, perhaps replaying routines or signaling their presence. The architecture of Boulder City Hospital enhances the eerie atmosphere. Long, narrow hallways, rows of patient rooms, and shadowed corners create natural opportunities for sound to echo and for shadows to appear distorted. Peeling paint, cracked floors, and broken windows cast patterns of light and darkness that make fleeting figures seem more tangible. The residual energy from decades of care, emergencies, and human emotion appears to linger in the very walls, interacting with visitors' senses to create a deeply unsettling experience. Paranormal investigators have documented a variety of phenomena within the hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting figures moving through halls and rooms. Audio devices record faint whispers, calls for help, and unexplained conversations. Temperature sensors frequently detect sudden drops, particularly in areas known for high activity during the hospital's operational years. Many investigators suggest that the spirits are bound by the intensity of their experiences, unable or unwilling to leave the spaces where so many pivotal moments occur. Visitors to Boulder City Hospital often report first-hand encounters with these presences. Guests describe shadowy figures appearing at the ends of hallways, phantom footsteps following them, and cold drafts moving from room to room. One explorer recalled standing near a former patient ward when he felt an invisible hand brush against his shoulder, sending a shiver down his spine. Another reported glimpsing a nurse walking silently through a corridor, disappearing as he attempted to follow. These experiences are consistent across different parts of the hospital, underscoring the persistent and active presence of spirits tied to the building. Despite its abandonment, Boulder City Hospital continues to draw those intrigued by its paranormal reputation. Urban explorers, paranormal enthusiasts, and local historians venture into the hospital seeking evidence of its hauntings, often approaching the building with respect for the lives once lived there. Henderson General Hospital, once a central medical facility in Henderson, Nevada, now stands silent and abandoned, its empty halls echoing the stories of decades past. Though the building has been left to decay, it has gained a reputation as one of the most haunted locations in the region. Visitors, urban explorers, and paranormal investigators alike report an unsettling range of phenomena: phantom footsteps echoing in deserted corridors, wheelchairs moving on their own, shadowy figures glimpsed in windows, and faint whispers that warn intruders to leave immediately. These experiences suggest that the hospital is far from empty, its long-abandoned walls retaining the energy of patients, staff, and the countless moments of life, illness, and death that once unfolded there. One of the most frequently reported occurrences at Henderson General is the sound of phantom footsteps. These footsteps often seem to follow visitors down the long hallways, approaching from behind or pacing in rooms that are completely empty. An urban explorer described walking down the second-floor corridor when he distinctly heard a steady, deliberate footfall behind him. Turning quickly, he saw no one, yet the sound continued for several steps before fading. Others have reported hearing hurried scuffing in areas where the nurses' station once stood, or slow measured steps in the surgical wing, giving the impression that the hospital's former occupants are endlessly repeating their routines, bound to the spaces where they once worked. Wheelchairs moving on their own are another common and unnerving phenomenon. Visitors frequently report seeing empty wheelchairs roll across hallways or pivot suddenly, as though guided by invisible hands. One investigator recalled entering a former patient ward when a wheelchair slowly moved from the corner of the room to the center of the floor without any physical interference. The movement was silent, deliberate, and unexplainable, leaving a tangible sense of presence behind. Some witnesses believe these occurrences are the residual energy of patients who spent significant time in wheelchairs, their spirits continuing to navigate the halls even after death. Shadowy figures are among the most unsettling experiences reported at Henderson General. Visitors often describe seeing vague human shapes, often at the edges of their vision or in windows lining the hallways. One guest recounted standing at the end of a corridor when a shadow appeared to be looking out a window, as if watching him. As he stepped closer, the figure seemed to melt into the darkness, leaving only the faint outline of a presence. Many encounters describe figures in hospital gowns, nurses' uniforms, or scrubs, moving silently through the halls or standing motionless at the end of corridors before vanishing without warning. These apparitions suggest that the spirits of patients, doctors, and nurses remain tethered to the building, replaying fragments of their lives long after the hospital's closure. Whispers are another eerie and common feature of Henderson General's haunting. Visitors report faint, unintelligible murmurs, urgent instructions, or even warnings to leave immediately. One paranormal investigator recalled exploring the administrative wing when a voice clearly whispered, "Go. Leave now." No one else was present, and the building's silence amplified the chilling effect. Other witnesses report hearing calls for help from empty patient rooms, nurses giving instructions to unseen colleagues, or the hushed sobs of former patients. These whispers create the sense that the building itself remembers the fears, urgency, and emotions of its former occupants. Replaying these experiences for those sensitive enough to perceive them, the hospital's abandoned architecture amplifies the haunting. Long, narrow corridors, rows of empty, patient rooms, and shadowed corners create natural echoes that carry sounds and distort visual perception. Broken windows, peeling paint, and exposed wiring cast uneven shadows, making fleeting figures seem more substantial. Residual energy from years of care, emergencies, and human suffering appears to be imprinted on the walls, interacting with visitors to create an atmosphere thick with tension and unease. Cold drafts often accompany other phenomena, particularly near operating rooms, patient wards, and hallways where apparitions have been seen. Visitors frequently report sudden drops in temperature, sometimes localized to a single room or corridor. One explorer recounted entering a former surgical suite and immediately feeling a frigid gust sweep past, even though all doors and windows were closed. The drop in temperature often coincides with other phenomena, such as phantom footsteps, moving objects, or shadowy figures, reinforcing the impression that the hospital is far from empty. Doors moving on their own is another recurring phenomenon. Heavy patient room doors, supply closets, and offices have been reported opening or closing without explanation. On one visit, a group of urban explorers watched as a door to a former ward slowly creaked open and then slammed shut with force, startling everyone present. No drafts or other physical causes were apparent, suggesting that these movements are connected to the unseen presences inhabiting the hospital. Paranormal investigators have documented numerous occurrences at Henderson General. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting figures gliding through hallways and rooms. Audio devices have recorded phantom footsteps, whispers, and distant cries. Temperature sensors frequently detect sudden drops in heat, particularly in areas of high reported activity. Experts suggest that the spirits remain tied to the hospital by the intensity of their experiences, unable to move on due to trauma, sudden death, or unfinished business. Visitors report first-hand encounters with these phenomena regularly. Guests describe shadowy figures appearing at the end of hallways, wheelchairs moving across empty rooms, cold drafts sweeping past, and whispers warning them to leave. One visitor recounted feeling an invisible presence brush past him as he explored the surgical wing. Another witnessed a nurse's silhouette in the corridor, vanishing when approached. These consistent experiences across different areas of the hospital underscore the enduring presence of spirits tied to the building's history. Laughlin Hospital, once a modest community medical facility serving the residents of Laughlin, Nevada, now sits abandoned, its hallways empty and its patient rooms silent. Though the building has long been closed, it has developed a reputation for paranormal activity that draws both urban explorers and curious visitors. The hospital's spectral presence is said to be strongest in its patient wards, hallways, and old operating rooms, where visitors report a chilling variety of phenomena. From ghostly cries echoing through deserted rooms, to doors moving inexplicably, and shadowy figures glimpsed in the corners of hallways. Laughlin Hospital is widely regarded as a place where the memories of past patients and staff have not faded but linger, replaying fragments of life, illness, and death for anyone who dares to enter. Among the most commonly reported occurrences at Laughlin Hospital are phantom cries and voices. Visitors frequently describe hearing faint, anguished calls from empty patient rooms. One urban explorer recounted walking past a former maternity ward when he heard the unmistakable sound of a baby crying, though the ward had been empty for decades. Others report hearing patients calling for assistance, whispered instructions from nurses, or the low murmur of conversations between medical staff. These sounds often seem to originate from nowhere, echoing down hallways, or coming from rooms that no longer house equipment or occupants. The persistence of these auditory phenomena gives the impression that the hospital continues to relive moments of fear, pain, and care long after its closure. Doors opening and closing without explanation are another frequent phenomenon. Heavy patient room doors, storage closets, and office doors have been observed moving on their own. One visitor described standing in a corridor when a door to a former surgical suite slowly creaked open and then slammed shut with force, startling everyone present. There was no breeze, no draft, and no physical interference, making the occurrence deeply unsettling. Multiple witnesses have reported similar experiences, reinforcing the idea that unseen presences are interacting with the environment, perhaps reenacting routines from the hospital's active years. Shadowy figures are among the most unnerving aspects of Lachlan Hospital's haunting. Visitors commonly report seeing vague human shapes moving through hallways or standing silently at the end of corridors. One guest described catching sight of a figure in a patient gown walking slowly down a hallway, disappearing as he approached. Others have observed the silhouettes of nurses or doctors gliding through rooms, their forms fading into the darkness when approached. These apparitions are typically fleeting, glimpsed only for a moment, but they leave a lasting impression, suggesting that the spirits of past patients and staff are tied to the spaces they once occupied, replaying fragments of their lives or lingering in anticipation of something unresolved. Cold spots and sudden drops in temperature are frequently reported, particularly in areas where apparitions have been seen or phantom sounds are heard. Visitors often feel an inexplicable chill in hallways, patient rooms, and especially near operating suites. One investigator recounted entering a surgical wing and being met with a sudden gust of icy air. Despite all doors and windows being closed, these cold drafts often accompany other paranormal activity, reinforcing the sense that the hospital is far from empty and that unseen forces remain present. The architecture of Lachlan Hospital contributes significantly to its haunted atmosphere. Long corridors, rows of identical patient rooms, and shadowy corners create natural echoes that amplify sounds and distort visual perception. Broken windows, peeling paint, and cracked floors cast patterns of light and shadow that make fleeting figures seem more tangible. The combination of residual energy from years of births, surgeries, and medical care with the decaying environment produces an atmosphere thick with tension and unease, heightening visitors' awareness of the paranormal. Paranormal investigators have documented various occurrences throughout the hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting shadows gliding across hallways, and audio recorders have picked up faint cries, whispers, and murmurs that cannot be attributed to any living person. Temperature sensors have confirmed sudden drops in heat, often in rooms or corridors with high activity reports. Many experts believe the hauntings are tied to the intense emotional experiences that occurred within the hospital. Pain, fear, relief, and death, all leaving residual energy that now manifests as ghostly activity. Visitors often recount first-hand experiences that leave them both awed and unnerved. Shadowy figures are seen at the ends of corridors. Doors move as if pushed by unseen hands, and cries or whispers seem to follow them from room to room. One explorer described standing in a former patient ward when he felt a cold hand brush against his shoulder. Another witnessed the figure of a nurse moving silently along a hallway, vanishing when approached. These repeated experiences across the building suggest a persistent, active presence, as though the hospital itself has become a vessel for the spirits of those who once occupied it. Even decades after its closure, Lachlan Hospital continues to attract those intrigued by its haunted reputation. Urban explorers, paranormal investigators, and local residents visit the building seeking evidence of the supernatural, often showing respect for the memories and experiences of the lives once lived within its walls. The hospital remains a place where the veil between the living and the dead feels thin, where the echoes of the past are replayed in audible, visible, and physical forms. Reno County Hospital, once a bustling medical center in Reno, Nevada, has long since closed its doors, leaving behind empty halls and deserted patient rooms. Despite its abandonment, the hospital has developed a chilling reputation for paranormal activity, attracting urban explorers, paranormal investigators, and curious locals seeking to experience the supernatural firsthand. Reports from visitors describe ghostly nurses appearing and vanishing without explanation, whispers in empty wards, unexplained cold spots, flickering lights, and phantom footsteps that echo endlessly through the building. The lingering energy of Reno County Hospital seems to replay fragments of life, illness, and care, binding the spirits of its former staff and patients to its decaying walls. One of the most common reports from visitors is the sighting of ghostly nurses. These apparitions are often seen gliding through hallways or appearing briefly at the ends of corridors before disappearing into thin air. One paranormal investigator recounted walking down the second-floor corridor when he saw a figure at the end, moving slowly toward him. As he approached, the nurse vanished, leaving behind only the impression that someone had just been there. Other witnesses report nurses attending to invisible patients or pausing at empty beds, creating the unnerving sense that the hospital's staff continues to care for patients long after the facility's closure. Whispers are another frequent phenomenon in Reno County Hospital. Visitors often hear faint voices emanating from vacant wards, echoing down hallways, or coming from rooms that no longer contain any furniture or equipment. These whispers range from indistinct murmurs to recognizable words, sometimes urgent instructions or calls for help. One urban explorer describes standing near a former patient room when he distinctly heard, "Stay here. Don't leave." The voice seemed to float through the air, untraceable and chilling. Other visitors have reported hearing nurses giving directions, patients calling out, or even faint laughter in areas once designated for treatment or recovery. These auditory experiences reinforce the impression that the building retains the memories of its past occupants, replaying fragments of human emotion and interaction. Cold spots are another hallmark of the hospital's haunting. Many visitors report sudden drops in temperature as they move from room to room, often accompanied by the sensation of being watched or followed. One investigator recalled stepping into the surgical wing and immediately feeling a frigid gust that seemed to sweep through the empty operating rooms. The chill was localized, intense, and impossible to explain by any natural cause. These sudden cold drafts frequently coincide with sightings of ghostly figures or unexplained sounds, suggesting that the spirits of former patients and staff remain tied to the spaces where they once lived and worked. Flickering lights add an additional layer of unease. Even in areas where electricity is no longer functioning, lights appear to pulse, dim, or ignite momentarily. Visitors have reported standing in completely darkened rooms when bulbs suddenly flare, only to go out again seconds later. Some have witnessed entire hallways intermittently illuminated without explanation, revealing shadowy figures or moving objects that vanish when approached. This phenomenon not only unnerves visitors but also suggests an interaction between the physical environment and residual spiritual energy, as if the hospital itself is attempting to make its presence known. Phantom footsteps echoing through the empty halls are a constant feature reported by those brave enough to explore the building. The footsteps often appear behind visitors, pacing along corridors, or moving rhythmically across vacant wards. One guest described walking through the third-floor hall when he distinctly heard slow, deliberate footfalls following him, stopping and starting as though someone was playing with his perception. Turning quickly, he saw no one, yet the sound persisted, fading only when he reached a stairwell. Other visitors report hearing hurried, scuffing the shuffle of patient feet, or the measured steps of medical staff, creating an eerie soundtrack to the hospital's abandoned interior. Doors opening and closing without physical cause are also commonly reported. Heavy patient room doors, supply closets, and office doors often move suddenly, sometimes creaking slowly or slamming shut. One group of visitors observed a door to a former operating room swing open, pause, and then shut with enough force to startle them. There was no detectable draft, no one nearby, and no mechanical failure. These seemingly purposeful movements contribute to the impression that the hospital is occupied by unseen entities, reenacting daily routines or asserting their presence in the environment. The hospital's architecture amplifies its haunting. Long corridors, rows of identical patient rooms, and darkened stairwells create natural echoes that distort sounds and shadows. Broken windows, peeling paint, and decaying floors cast irregular patterns of light, heightening the impression of movement and making fleeting figures appear more substantial. The combination of residual energy from decades of medical care and the visual decay of the building creates an atmosphere thick with tension and unease, amplifying the impact of paranormal encounters. Paranormal investigators have documented a wide range of phenomena in Reno County Hospital. Infrared cameras have captured shadowy figures moving through corridors and rooms, while audio devices record whispers, cries, and footsteps that have no identifiable source. Temperature sensors frequently detect sudden drops, particularly in areas with reported sightings. Many experts believe the hauntings are tied to the intense emotional experiences that occurred within the hospital. Fear, illness, healing, and loss, leaving behind residual energy that now manifests as spectral activity. Visitors' first-hand experiences are equally compelling. Shadowy figures appear at the ends of hallways, phantom footsteps follow them, cold drafts sweep through rooms, and whispers warn them to leave. One explorer recounted feeling an invisible presence brush past him in the administrative wing. Another witnessed a nurse's silhouette gliding along a corridor, vanishing before he could reach it. These consistent reports suggest that Reno County Hospital remains far from empty, its spirits bound to the memories and emotions of the building's history. West Wendover Hospital, once a modest but vital medical facility in West Wendover, Nevada, has sat abandoned since the late 20th century. Despite years of neglect and decay, the building continues to draw attention, not for its architecture or history alone, but for its reputation as a hotspot of paranormal activity. The hospital is said to be haunted by the spirits of patients and staff, lingering long after the institution closed its doors. Visitors frequently report shadowy figures gliding through the hallways, ghostly murmurs echoing from empty rooms, and particularly intense activity in the old operating suites. The energy of the hospital seems frozen in time, replaying the last moments of life, pain, and care, leaving anyone who enters acutely aware that the past is never fully gone. One of the most common experiences reported at West Wendover Hospital is the sighting of shadowy figures. Visitors often describe seeing indistinct human shapes moving through hallways or standing silently at the ends of corridors. Many witnesses report patients' figures, sometimes in hospital gowns, wandering aimlessly as though seeking assistance or guidance. One explorer recounted walking down a second-floor corridor when a shadow appeared at the far end, seemingly moving toward him, only to vanish suddenly as he approached. Others have seen figures seated in empty patient rooms, rising and disappearing before contact can be made. These sightings give the impression that the spirits are trapped in the hospital, forever replaying fragments of their lives and final moments. Ghostly murmurs and whispers are another recurring phenomenon. Visitors frequently hear conversations or soft voices emanating from empty rooms. The whispers are often unintelligible, though some claim to hear calls for help, faint instructions from nurses, or the sobs of patients. One urban explorer described hearing a nurse's voice calling out for a missing patient, while another reported the distinct sound of a patient whispering, "I can't breathe," from a long-abandoned ward. These auditory experiences often occur in areas where the hospital's energy is strongest, reinforcing the notion that the building itself holds residual memories of the lives once lived within its walls. The operating rooms, in particular, are reported to be highly active at night. Visitors describe cold spots, unexplained flickering lights, and the sensation of unseen presences moving among the surgical equipment. One investigator recalled entering an operating suite and feeling an intense chill sweep across the room. As he adjusted his camera, he noticed a shadowy figure move between the surgical tables, vanishing moments later. Others have reported hearing the faint clatter of instruments or muffled voices, discussing procedures long after the hospital's closure. These phenomena suggest that the operating rooms, once centers of life-saving work and intense human emotion, have retained a strong spiritual imprint. Phantom footsteps are another frequent occurrence. The echoes of footsteps are often heard pacing down corridors, approaching from behind, or circling rooms. One visitor described standing in a long hallway when he distinctly heard measured footsteps following him, stopping and starting in rhythm with his own movements. Turning quickly, he saw no one, yet the sound persisted for several steps before fading. Other guests report hearing hurried scuffing, the shuffle of a patient walking, or the deliberate steps of medical staff, creating an eerie soundtrack that follows visitors as they explore the building. Doors moving on their own contribute to the hospital's unsettling atmosphere. One group of explorers witnessed a door to a former patient ward slowly swing open and then close with a forceful slam. Despite the lack of any breeze or human intervention, such activity reinforces the impression that the hospital is occupied by unseen forces. Replaying daily routines or interacting with visitors in ways that are impossible to explain, cold drafts and sudden drops in temperature are frequently reported throughout the hospital. These chills often occur alongside other phenomena, such as phantom footsteps or shadowy figures. Visitors have described walking into a room and immediately feeling a frigid gust sweep past, though all doors and windows were closed. Such localized cold spots contribute to the oppressive feeling of the hospital, creating the sense that the spirits of former patients and staff are actively present, unable to move on from the place that defined their final moments. The architectural layout of West Wendover Hospital amplifies its haunting. Long, narrow corridors, rows of identical patient rooms, and shadowed stairwells create natural echoes that carry sounds and distort perceptions. Broken windows, peeling paint, and decaying floors cast irregular patterns of light and shadow, enhancing the impression of movement and making fleeting apparitions appear more substantial. The combination of residual energy from years of medical care and the building's physical decay produces a tense and eerie atmosphere, heightening the intensity of paranormal encounters. Paranormal investigators have documented multiple forms of activity at West Wendover Hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting figures moving through hallways and rooms. Audio recorders have picked up whispers, cries, and phantom footsteps, and temperature sensors often detect sudden drops in heat. Experts suggest that the hauntings stem from the emotional intensity of the hospital's past fear, pain, hope, and death, all leaving imprints that now manifest as ghostly activity. Visitors consistently report encounters that are both chilling and memorable. Shadowy figures appear at the ends of hallways, doors move inexplicably, cold drafts sweep through rooms, and faint murmurs echo throughout the building. One explorer described feeling a cold presence brush past him in the surgical wings. Another saw the silhouette of a patient walking slowly through a corridor, disappearing as he approached. These experiences reinforced the enduring presence of spirits tied to the hospital, replaying fragments of their former lives. Ely Hospital, located in the quiet town of Ely, Nevada, has long been known not for its medical achievements, but for its enduring reputation as a haunted site. Though the hospital has been closed for years, visitors continue to report a wide range of paranormal activity that seems tied to the building itself. Phantom figures in hospital gowns roam the halls, the cries of unseen patients echo down corridors, and doors swing open and shut without explanation. Nurses' whispers are frequently reported, while lights flicker in rooms where electricity no longer flows. The hospital's lingering presence has created a place where the past refuses to remain buried, and the spirits of patients and staff continue to replay fragments of life, illness, and final moments. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Ely Hospital is the appearance of shadowy figures dressed in hospital gowns. Witnesses described seeing these apparitions gliding through corridors, standing at the foot of empty beds, or slowly moving between patient rooms. One visitor recounted walking down a second-floor hallway when a figure suddenly appeared at the far end, its outline faint but unmistakably human. As the visitor approached, the figure vanished, leaving only the eerie impression that someone had been there moments before. Others report seeing multiple figures at once, sometimes interacting with one another, or moving as if carrying out tasks they performed in life, such as tending to patients or walking between wards. These ghostly sightings suggest that the hospital retains the presence of those who once lived and worked within its walls, unable to leave behind the place that defined their final days. The cries of patients are another frequent and unsettling feature. Visitors often report hearing anguished shouts or faint groans emanating from empty rooms. One explorer described standing near the former maternity ward when a sudden, heart-wrenching cry pierced the air, though the room was vacant and the windows closed. Others hear soft moans or desperate pleas for assistance, echoing down corridors and vanishing just as suddenly as they appeared. These auditory phenomena often coincide with sightings of phantom figures, suggesting that the spirits are tied to their past experiences, replaying moments of pain, fear, or illness. Doors moving without human intervention are a hallmark of Ely Hospital's haunting. Heavy patient room doors, supply closets, and administrative offices are frequently observed swinging open or slamming shut on their own. One visitor described standing in the surgical wing when a door creaked open slowly, paused as if hesitating, and then slammed with sudden force. There was no draft, no wind, and no one nearby. Multiple witnesses have reported similar occurrences throughout the hospital, reinforcing the sense that unseen presences are interacting with the environment, possibly reenacting their daily routines or asserting their spectral presence. Nurses' whispers are often reported, adding another layer to the hospital's eerie atmosphere. Visitors have described hearing faint instructions or comforting words drifting through empty wards, sometimes accompanied by footsteps. One urban explorer noted hearing a nurse softly calling for a patient, her voice clear but untraceable. Others report the faint sound of a nurse instructing colleagues or tending to unseen patients. These auditory experiences suggest that some spirits may be replaying their duties, bound to the hospital by devotion, trauma, or unresolved events. Lights flickering in unpowered rooms are another common occurrence, even in areas where electricity has long been disconnected. Bulbs flare briefly, casting long shadows across walls and floors, only to dim or extinguish seconds later. These sudden illuminations often coincide with sightings of ghostly figures or unexplained sounds, making fleeting shadows appear more solid and enhancing the sense of a lingering presence. Visitors have reported hallways briefly bathed in light, revealing moving figures that vanish when approached, as if the building itself is attempting to communicate with those who enter. Cold spots are another frequent phenomenon, often accompanying other manifestations. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature in specific rooms or hallways, sometimes feeling an invisible presence brush past them. One investigator recounted stepping into a former patient room and immediately sensing a frigid gust sweeping across the space. These cold drafts appear to follow particular areas of high activity such as operating rooms, wards, or long corridors, reinforcing the notion that the hospital is not empty and that unseen forces remain tied to the spaces where they once lived and worked. Phantom footsteps echoing through corridors are also commonly reported. Visitors frequently hear rhythmic pacing, scuffing, or hurried steps in areas devoid of human life. One explorer described walking along a dark hallway when measured footsteps seemed to follow him, stopping and starting in rhythm with his own movements. Turning quickly, he saw no one, yet the sound persisted, fading only after he reached the end of the corridor. These auditory experiences, combined with visual sightings and environmental anomalies, create an immersive and unsettling sense that Ely Hospital is far from abandoned. The architectural layout of Ely Hospital amplifies its haunting. Long, narrow hallways, identical patient rooms, and dark stairwells create natural echoes that distort sound and shadow, making fleeting figures appear more substantial. Peeling paint, broken windows, and decaying floors produce shifting light patterns that enhance the impression of movement and make transient apparitions more tangible. The combination of the hospital's residual energy from decades of medical care and its physical decay creates an atmosphere thick with tension, unease, and the sense that the past is never fully gone. Paranormal investigators have documented a wide range of activity at Ely Hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting figures gliding through corridors. Audio recorders have captured whispers, cries, and phantom footsteps, and temperature sensors have detected sudden drops in heat. Many experts believe the hauntings are connected to the intensity of emotions once experienced within the hospital: pain, fear, relief, and death, leaving enduring traces that now manifest as spectral activity. Virginia City Sanitarium, perched on the hills of Virginia City, Nevada, stands as a relic of a bygone-era place, once dedicated to healing, but now shrouded in decay and whispers of the supernatural. Though abandoned for decades, the building continues to draw attention from paranormal enthusiasts and curious visitors. The sanitarium is said to be haunted by the spirits of former patients who remain bound to the halls where they once received care. Shadowy figures are often seen peering from broken windows, whispers echo through empty rooms, and sudden cold drafts sweep through the building, following visitors as they explore its corridors. Many claim the spirits are trapped, endlessly reliving their treatments, their suffering imprinted on the very walls of the sanitarium. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Virginia City Sanitarium is the appearance of shadowy figures. Visitors often describe seeing indistinct silhouettes at the windows or moving slowly through the corridors. These figures are usually glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, vanishing when directly observed, leaving an unsettling sense that someone or something is always watching. One paranormal investigator recalled approaching a second-floor window and seeing a shadowy figure inside. Standing motionless, its form blurred but unmistakably human. As she stepped closer, the figure seemed to dissolve into the darkness, leaving behind only the sense of a presence that had been intensely aware of her. Others report seeing figures lying in empty beds, walking through deserted hallways, or standing silently at the ends of long corridors, creating the impression that the sanitarium is far from empty. Whispers are another hallmark of the hauntings. Visitors frequently report hearing faint voices emanating from vacant rooms, sometimes calling names or issuing indecipherable instructions. These murmurs are often soft at first, barely audible, then grow louder before fading as quickly as they appeared. One visitor described standing near what was once a treatment room when he distinctly heard a voice whisper, "Don't forget, follow the rules." No one was present, yet the voice seemed to come from the walls themselves. Others have heard patients calling out for help or pleading for comfort, while some have described faint laughter, echoing as if trapped in the hallways, replaying moments from long ago. Cold drafts are a pervasive phenomenon throughout the building. Visitors often report sudden drops in temperature that seem to follow them from room to room. One investigator recounted stepping into the old therapy wing and immediately feeling a frigid gust sweep across the room. Even though all windows and doors were closed, these chills often coincide with other paranormal manifestations, such as the sighting of a shadowy figure or the sound of whispers, heightening the feeling of unease. Some visitors report feeling an unseen presence brush past them, as though the spirits of former patients are moving alongside them, invisible but undeniably present. Doors opening and closing without cause are also commonly reported. Heavy patient room doors, administrative offices, and treatment rooms have been observed swinging open, shutting abruptly, or creaking as if someone is moving behind them. One group of explorers recounted standing in a hallway when a door at the far end slowly swung open, paused for a moment, and then slammed shut with a forceful bang. There was no wind, no visible force, and no one in the corridor. Such activity creates the impression that the building itself is alive with unseen energy, echoing the routines and movements of those who once occupied it. The sanitarium's architecture intensifies the haunting atmosphere. Long, narrow corridors, high ceilings, and rows of identical patient rooms amplify echoes and distort sound, making even the faintest noises unnervingly pronounced. Broken windows, peeling paint, and crumbling floors create irregular shadows and shifting patterns of light, causing fleeting figures to appear more tangible. Stairwells leading to empty wings feel particularly oppressive, as if the building itself channels the residual energy of decades of human suffering and care. The physical decay of the structure merges with the lingering emotional energy, producing an environment ripe for spectral encounters. Phantom footsteps are commonly reported, echoing through empty hallways and treatment areas. Visitors describe hearing pacing, scuffing, or hurried steps in areas devoid of human life. One guest recounted walking down the main corridor when he distinctly heard slow, deliberate footsteps following him, stopping and starting in rhythm with his own movements. Turning quickly, he saw no one, yet the sound persisted until he reached the stairwell. Other explorers report hearing the shuffle of patients, the measured steps of staff, or even rapid footfalls, as if someone were fleeing, reinforcing the sense that the building is still occupied by echoes of the past. Lights flickering in unpowered rooms have also been reported. Though the sanitarium has no active electrical system, visitors often experience sudden flashes or pulses of light, illuminating hallways or patient rooms for brief moments. These intermittent illuminations sometimes coincide with other paranormal events, such as shadowy figures moving or whispers echoing from walls. The fleeting light casts long, shifting shadows that make the presence of spirits seem even more immediate, as though the building itself is attempting to reveal its hidden occupants. Paranormal investigators have documented a range of phenomena at Virginia City Sanitarium. Infrared cameras capture fleeting figures moving through hallways. Audio devices record whispers and cries with no identifiable source. And temperature sensors detect abrupt drops in heat. Experts suggest that the hauntings may be tied to the intensity of the emotional experiences that occurred within the buildings of suffering, healing, fear, and isolation, all leaving lingering imprints on the structure. Tonopah Medical Center, located in the remote town of Tonopah, Nevada, is a place where the past refuses to stay buried. Though long abandoned, the medical center has earned a reputation for paranormal activity, drawing the curiosity of urban explorers and paranormal investigators alike. Visitors report phantom footsteps echoing along the empty halls, flickering lights with no electrical cause, and shadowy figures moving through the deserted patient wards. Some even claim to hear the faint beeping of medical equipment that has long been removed, as if the building itself is replaying echoes of the care and suffering that once defined its daily life. The energy within Tonopah Medical Center seems thick with memories, leaving anyone who ventures inside acutely aware that the past lingers, unwilling to let go. One of the most frequent reports at Tonopah Medical Center involves shadowy figures. Witnesses describe seeing indistinct forms moving through the corridors or standing silently at the end of long hallways. These figures often appear to be dressed in hospital attire, resembling patients or staff members, and vanish when approached. One visitor recounted walking through the second-floor ward when a shadow suddenly appeared at the far end of the hall. Its outline human but indistinct. As he stepped closer, the figure dissipated into the darkness, leaving a lingering feeling that someone or something had been watching him intently. Others report multiple figures appearing at once, sometimes interacting with one another, or moving as if carrying out daily routines that have long since ceased. Phantom footsteps are a hallmark of the hauntings at Tonopah Medical Center. Visitors frequently hear the sound of measured pacing, hurried steps, or shuffling along hallways that are otherwise empty. One urban explorer described standing in the main corridor when he distinctly heard footsteps behind him, stopping and starting in rhythm with his own. Turning quickly, he saw no one, yet the footsteps continued for several more steps before fading away. Others report hearing the approach of multiple sets of feet, moving between patient rooms or along stairwells, creating the eerie impression that the hospital is still alive with unseen activity. Lights flickering in abandoned areas are another recurring phenomenon. In rooms long without electricity, bulbs flare briefly or cast pulses of light, often coinciding with sightings of shadowy figures or the sound of phantom footsteps. Visitors have described hallways briefly illuminated by sudden flashes, revealing fleeting figures or the outlines of equipment that no longer exists. These unexplained illuminations intensify the unsettling atmosphere, as if the building itself is attempting to communicate or replay fragments of its history. The faint beeping of medical equipment is one of the more unnerving reports. Several witnesses claim to hear the rhythmic tones of heart monitors or other hospital devices, even though all equipment has been removed years ago. One explorer recounted hearing a soft, steady beep from what used to be the intensive care unit, growing slightly louder before fading, only to resume moments later. These auditory experiences create the impression that the hospital is reliving its past, replaying the sounds of care, treatment, and life-sustaining machinery. Doors opening and closing on their own are another common occurrence. Heavy patient room doors, supply closets, and administrative offices have been observed swinging open, slamming shut, or creaking as if someone is passing behind them. One group of visitors reported standing in a dark corridor when a door at the far end slowly opened and then slammed forcefully. Despite the absence of wind or any human presence, such activity reinforces the idea that unseen forces inhabit the building, interacting with the environment in ways that echo the routines of daily life long ago. Cold spots are frequently experienced throughout the center. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature, often localized to specific rooms or corridors. One investigator described entering an old patient ward and immediately feeling an icy chill sweep across the space, even with all windows and doors closed. These frigid areas often coincide with other paranormal phenomena, such as the appearance of shadowy figures or the sound of phantom footsteps, enhancing the sense that the hospital is far from empty and that unseen presences are actively moving within it. The architecture of Tanapa Medical Center adds to its haunted reputation. Long, narrow corridors, high ceilings, and rows of identical patient rooms create natural echoes, distorting sounds and shadows. Peeling paint, broken windows, and decaying floors form irregular patterns of light and shadow, making fleeting apparitions appear more substantial. Stairwells leading to dark wings of the hospital feel particularly oppressive, channeling the residual energy of decades of illness, care, and human emotion. The combination of physical decay and lingering emotional energy produces an atmosphere thick with tension, dread, and the sense that the past never truly fades. Paranormal investigators have documented a wide range of activity at Tanapa Medical Center. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting figures gliding through corridors and patient rooms. Audio devices have recorded whispers, phantom footsteps, and unexplained beeping, and temperature sensors detect sudden drops in heat. Many experts suggest that the hauntings stem from the emotional intensity of the hospital's past moments of fear, relief, suffering, and death that left indelible imprints on the building itself. Goldfield Hospital, located in the historic mining town of Goldfield, Nevada, stands as a silent testament to the hardships and tragedies of the early 20th century. Though long abandoned, the building is said to harbor the spirits of miners and townsfolk who perished while awaiting care. Unable to leave the place where their final moments unfolded, visitors and paranormal investigators frequently report ghostly figures moving through the halls, whispers echoing from empty rooms, and sudden cold spots that seem to follow them from one area to the next. Some rooms, particularly those that once held patients in critical condition, are reported to be especially active, with phantom voices calling out in distress, as if the building itself retains the echoes of suffering, fear, and hope that once filled its corridors. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Goldfield Hospital is the appearance of shadowy figures. Witnesses describe seeing indistinct silhouettes wandering through the hallways or standing at the ends of long corridors. These figures are often glimpsed peripherally, vanishing when directly approached, leaving a lingering impression that someone is always observing. One visitor recounted walking through the old surgical wing when a shadow appeared at the far end of the hall. Its form was vaguely human, dressed in what seemed like period clothing or hospital attire, and it lingered for a few moments before fading into the darkness. Others have seen multiple figures simultaneously, sometimes moving as if tending to patients or performing tasks that were once routine, suggesting that the hospital remains a place of perpetual activity for the spirits bound to it. Whispers are another hallmark of the hauntings. Visitors frequently report hearing soft murmurs coming from vacant rooms, often unintelligible at first, but occasionally taking the form of recognizable words or phrases. Some have described hearing cries for help, urgent instructions, or even faint expressions of comfort, as though unseen nurses or townsfolk are replaying moments from decades ago. One paranormal investigator described standing in the second-floor ward when she heard a voice clearly call, "Please, help me," though the room was completely empty. These auditory experiences add to the sense that the hospital is alive with memories, preserving the emotional intensity of the people who once passed through its halls. Cold spots are a common occurrence throughout Goldfield Hospital. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature, often in specific rooms or hallways, sometimes accompanied by other paranormal phenomena such as whispers or shadowy figures. One explorer noted feeling a chilling gust sweep through the waiting room, even though all windows and doors were closed. These cold drafts frequently follow individuals as they move from room to room, reinforcing the impression that the building is saturated with lingering energy, a residual imprint of the patient's final moments. Phantom footsteps are another common manifestation. Witnesses often hear the measured pacing of someone walking down a corridor, the shuffle of boots, or hurried steps in areas devoid of life. One visitor recounted walking through the main hallway when distinct footsteps echoed behind him, stopping and starting in rhythm with his own movements. Turning quickly, he saw nothing, yet the sound persisted, fading only after he reached the end of the hall. Others have described footsteps ascending stairwells or moving between wards, creating an unnerving impression that the building is still occupied by those who once walked its halls in life. Doors moving on their own are frequently reported. Heavy patient room doors, supply closets, and offices have been seen swinging open, slamming shut, or creaking as if pushed by invisible hands. One group of explorers described a door at the far end of the surgical wing, slowly opening, pausing as though hesitating, and then slamming with sudden force. These incidents, repeated by multiple visitors, reinforce the impression that unseen presences are interacting with the environment, replaying the routines of daily life from decades past. Auditory phenomena are often complemented by other sensory experiences. Some visitors report the faint ringing of old medical equipment or the sound of beds shifting. Others claim to smell antiseptic or faint smoke, sensations that seem out of place in the decaying building but serve to enhance the feeling of being in the midst of residual energy left behind by past patients and staff. Lights flickering in unpowered rooms further amplify the haunting, casting shifting shadows that make fleeting figures appear more tangible and real. The hospital's architecture itself contributes to the haunting. Long, narrow corridors, high ceilings, and rows of identical patient rooms create natural echoes that distort sounds and shadows, making phantom movements more convincing. Peeling paint, broken windows, and crumbling floors produce shifting patterns of light and darkness that enhance the perception of movement. Stairwells leading to upper floors feel particularly oppressive, channeling the emotional energy of decades of suffering and care. The building's physical decay, combined with the intensity of the past events it witnessed, makes every step inside the hospital a reminder that the past has not fully faded. Paranormal investigators have documented a wide range of activity at Goldfield Hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting shadows moving through corridors. Audio recorders have picked up whispers and phantom cries, and temperature sensors have noted sudden drops in heat. Many experts suggest that the hauntings are the result of residual emotional energy left behind by patients and staff, intensifying over time within the building's walls. Paranormal Hospital, located near Alamo, Nevada, stands as a relic of the past, its halls abandoned yet far from empty. The building's quiet, decaying exterior belies the eerie activity reported inside, where visitors, urban explorers, and paranormal investigators consistently encounter phenomena that suggest the spirits of doctors, nurses, and patients remain tethered to the hospital. Phantom figures roam deserted corridors, flickering lights illuminate empty rooms, and unexplained footsteps echo through the halls, creating a chilling impression that the hospital continues to function in some spectral form. Those who enter are often confronted with the unsettling sense that the hospital has not forgotten its past, and that its unseen inhabitants are endlessly replaying routines long ended. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported occurrences at Paranormal Hospital. Witnesses describe seeing fleeting silhouettes moving through hallways or standing at the end of stairwells. These forms often resemble medical staff from decades past, dressed in period uniforms, and appear to be engaged in activities such as checking on patients, moving equipment, or attending to beds that have long been empty. One visitor recounted standing in the former patient ward when a figure of a nurse appeared at the far end of the room, moving deliberately toward a bed before vanishing without a trace. Other explorers have observed multiple figures simultaneously, their movements synchronized as if carrying out the routines of daily hospital life, reinforcing the impression that Paranormal Hospital is haunted by its own history. Phantom footsteps are a hallmark of the hauntings. Many visitors report hearing measured pacing, hurried shuffling, or the rhythmic tread of boots along corridors where no one is present. One investigator described walking down the main hallway when she distinctly heard footsteps behind her. Stopping and starting in time with her own movements. Turning, she saw nothing, yet the sound persisted, fading only after she reached a stairwell. Others have recounted hearing multiple sets of footsteps moving simultaneously through different wings of the hospital, creating the impression that the building is alive with unseen activity. Flickering lights are another common phenomenon. Despite the lack of an active electrical system, rooms and hallways occasionally illuminate briefly, casting eerie shadows that make figures seem more tangible. Witnesses often report that these flashes occur in conjunction with other paranormal events, such as the appearance of shadowy figures or the sound of footsteps, heightening the sense of unease. One visitor described walking into a long, dark corridor when a series of lights suddenly flickered on, revealing the vague outline of a doctor walking past an empty patient room, only for the lights to go out again moments later. The sounds of the hospital extend beyond footsteps and shadows. Some visitors report faint murmurs or voices calling out from empty rooms, echoing through the long corridors. At times, the voices seem urgent, as if giving instructions or tending to patients, while other times they are plaintive, calling for help or comfort. One explorer recalled hearing a distinct, whispered, "It's okay," rest now emanating from a hallway that had been empty for decades. These auditory experiences create a vivid sense of presence, as if the spirits of medical staff and patients are endlessly replaying moments from their time within the hospital. Doors moving on their own are a frequently reported phenomenon. Patient room doors, supply closets, and administrative offices have been observed opening slowly, swinging closed, or creaking as though someone had passed through. One group of visitors described the door at the far end of the surgical wing, opening slowly, pausing briefly as if hesitating, then slamming shut without any discernible cause. Such activity reinforces the impression that unseen forces are actively inhabiting the hospital, performing tasks that mirror the daily routines of its long-departed occupants. Cold spots are prevalent throughout Paranormal Hospital. Visitors often experience sudden drops in temperature that follow them from room to room. One paranormal investigator described entering the former emergency ward and feeling an icy chill sweep across the space. Despite all doors and windows being closed, these cold spots often coincide with other phenomena, such as shadowy figures or phantom footsteps, enhancing the feeling of being watched and the awareness that unseen presences occupy the hospital. The hospital's architecture contributes to its haunting. Long, narrow corridors, high ceilings, and rows of identical patient rooms create natural echoes that amplify every sound, making footsteps and whispers more pronounced. Peeling paint, cracked walls, and crumbling floors form irregular patterns of light and shadow, making fleeting figures appear more solid and real. Stairwells and upper floors, particularly those leading to patient wards, feel especially oppressive, as if channeling the emotional residue of decades of care, suffering, and death. The building itself seems to act as a conduit for the energy that lingers within, intensifying the sense that the past has never truly left. Paranormal investigations at Paranormal Hospital have documented a wide range of activity. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting figures gliding through corridors. Audio recorders have picked up whispers and cries with no discernible source. And temperature sensors detect sudden, localized drops in heat. Investigators suggest that these hauntings may stem from residual emotional energy left by the hospital, as former occupants' patients experiencing fear, illness, and mortality, and staff carrying the burden of care and responsibility. Caliente Hospital, located in the quiet town of Caliente, Nevada, has long been a source of eerie fascination. Though abandoned for decades, the hospital continues to draw visitors intrigued by reports of paranormal activity. Locals and paranormal enthusiasts alike describe encounters with ghostly figures in the hallways, disembodied whispers from empty patient rooms, and sudden cold drafts that send shivers down the spine. The building seems to preserve the memories of the countless patients and staff who passed through. Its doors and some rooms carry the faint, lingering scent of antiseptic, as if the hospital itself refuses to let go of its past. Every corridor, stairwell, and ward seems to hum with residual energy, leaving those who enter acutely aware that the spirits within have no intention of leaving quietly. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported phenomena at Caliente Hospital. Visitors describe seeing fleeting silhouettes moving through the halls or standing at the end of stairwells. Often, these figures appear to be dressed in period clothing or old hospital uniforms, giving the impression of doctors and nurses performing their duties long after the building has been vacated. One explorer recounted walking down a narrow corridor when he noticed a dark figure slowly moving past a row of patient rooms. As he approached, the figure vanished, leaving behind an unsettling sense of being observed. Other visitors have reported seeing multiple figures simultaneously, sometimes moving as if tending to invisible patients, creating the impression that the hospital's wards are still occupied by its spectral residents. Unexplained whispers are another hallmark of the hauntings at Caliente Hospital. Guests frequently hear murmurs and soft voices emanating from empty rooms. These whispers range from indistinct sounds to faintly intelligible phrases, often echoing through the long corridors. Some have described hearing words of comfort, quiet instructions, or urgent pleas for help, as if the voices are replaying moments of care or distress from decades past. One paranormal investigator recalled hearing a soft whisper say, "It's okay. Rest now," coming from an abandoned patient room. Though no one was present, the emotional weight of the voice left a lingering chill in the air, intensifying the feeling that the hospital is alive with unseen presences. Cold drafts are another common occurrence. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature, often concentrated in specific areas such as former patient wards, hallways, or stairwells. These chills are frequently accompanied by other paranormal phenomena, such as shadowy figures or whispers, enhancing the sense of unease. One guest described entering a long, empty ward only to feel icy air sweep across the room, despite all windows and doors being closed. These cold spots seem to move with visitors as they traverse the building, giving the impression that unseen entities are following or observing them. Phantom footsteps are reported throughout the hospital. Guests often hear the measured pacing, hurried shuffling, or rhythmic tread of boots along corridors where no one is present. One explorer described walking down a main hallway when he distinctly heard footsteps behind him, stopping and starting in time with his own. Turning quickly, he saw nothing, yet the sound continued for several steps before fading away. Others have recounted hearing multiple sets of footsteps echoing simultaneously through different wings, creating the unnerving feeling that the building is occupied by unseen staff and patients performing their daily routines. Doors moving on their own are a frequently observed phenomenon at Caliente Hospital. Patient room doors, supply closets, and offices have been seen swinging open, slamming shut, or creaking as if someone has just passed through. One group of visitors recounted standing in the main corridor when a door at the far end slowly opened, paused for a moment, and then slammed without any discernible cause. Such activity reinforces the impression that unseen presences inhabit the hospital, replaying daily routines and tasks from a time long past. The lingering smell of antiseptic is one of the more subtle yet unnerving aspects of the haunting. Several visitors have reported the faint scent of hospital chemicals in rooms that have long been abandoned, even when no cleaning products are present. This olfactory memory seems to connect the present with the past, evoking the countless hours of patient care, the quiet urgency of nurses, and the clinical environment that once dominated the building. Combined with shadowy figures, whispers, and cold spots, The smell of antiseptic serves as a tangible reminder of the lives once lived and lost within these walls. The architecture of Caliente Hospital contributes to its eerie atmosphere. Long, narrow corridors, high ceilings, and rows of identical patient rooms create natural echoes that amplify every sound, making whispers, footsteps, and creaking doors more pronounced. Peeling paint, cracked walls, and worn floors create shifting patterns of light and shadow that make fleeting apparitions appear more substantial. Stairwells leading to upper floors feel particularly oppressive, channeling the emotional residue of decades of human suffering and care. The hospital itself seems to act as a vessel for the energy that lingers within, intensifying the sensation that the past is never truly gone. Paranormal investigations at Caliente Hospital have documented a wide range of activity. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting shadows moving through corridors. Audio recorders have picked up whispers and cries without identifiable sources, and temperature sensors detect sudden drops in heat. Many experts suggest that the hauntings are residual manifestations of the emotional energy left by patients and staff. Fear, illness, hope, and despair imprinted on the building and enduring long after it was abandoned. Fallon Hospital, situated in the quiet town of Fallon, Nevada, stands as a long-abandoned relic of medical history, yet its empty corridors are far from silent. The hospital's eerie reputation stems from countless reports of paranormal activity spanning decades. Phantom footsteps echo through vacant hallways. Shadowy figures in nurses' and doctors' attire appear and vanish without warning. And unexplained cold spots seem to follow visitors wherever they go. Some rooms, particularly former patient wards, are said to carry the faint, lingering sounds of cries and murmurs, as though the pain and fear of those who once occupied the building have imprinted themselves on the structure. For anyone entering Fallon Hospital, the sense of being watched, of sharing space with unseen presences, is immediate and persistent. Shadowy figures are the most commonly reported phenomena. Visitors describe fleeting silhouettes moving down hallways, standing at the end of stairwells, or appearing at the edge of rooms. Many of these apparitions resemble medical staff from earlier decades, clad in period uniforms, sometimes carrying clipboards or tending to invisible patients. One paranormal investigator recounted walking through the former surgical wing when a dark figure slowly passed the far end of a corridor. As he approached, the figure dissipated into the shadows, leaving behind a lingering impression that someone or something was still performing duties long abandoned. Other witnesses have reported seeing multiple figures at once, moving as if fulfilling the daily routines of a fully occupied hospital, lending a ghostly vitality to an otherwise silent and decaying structure. Phantom footsteps are another hallmark of Fallon Hospital's hauntings. Visitors frequently hear the measured pacing of someone walking, the hurried shuffle of boots, or the rhythmic tread of shoes echoing along hallways where no one is present. One guest described walking down a main corridor when footsteps behind him began to mirror his own, pausing and resuming in tandem. Turning around revealed no one, yet the sound persisted for several steps before fading. Others have reported multiple sets of footsteps moving through separate wings simultaneously, reinforcing the unnerving feeling that the building is still alive with unseen activity. Cold spots are a recurrent phenomenon, often appearing in former patient wards, stairwells, or long hallways. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature that seem localized, chilling the air around them while leaving surrounding areas unaffected. These cold drafts are frequently accompanied by other paranormal activity such as shadowy figures or whispers, intensifying the sense of unease. One explorer recounted stepping into the second-floor ward when a sudden icy gust swept across the room, despite all windows and doors being tightly closed. Such experiences create the impression that unseen presences are actively moving through the hospital, observing and interacting with anyone who dares enter. Unexplained sounds are equally common. Whispered voices, faint cries, and muffled conversations often emanate from empty rooms. Sometimes the voices are comforting, giving instructions or offering reassurance, while other times they convey urgency or distress, as though patients or staff are reliving moments of suffering. One visitor described hearing a distinct cry from a room at the end of a corridor. "Help me, please," even though the space had been empty for decades. The auditory phenomena are so vivid that witnesses often feel the emotional weight of the past pressing in alongside the sounds, blurring the line between memory and present reality. Doors moving on their own add another layer to the hospital's unsettling reputation. Patient room doors, supply closets, and offices have been observed opening, closing, or creaking as if someone has passed through. One group of explorers recounted a door at the far end of the surgical wing slowly opening, pausing, then slamming shut without any visible cause. Such activity reinforces the perception that unseen entities are performing routine tasks, repeating behaviors that were once part of daily life in the hospital. The building itself amplifies the haunting. Long, narrow corridors, high ceilings, and rows of identical patient rooms create natural echoes, enhancing sounds like footsteps, whispers, and creaking doors. Peeling paint, cracked walls, and worn floors create shifting shadows that make fleeting apparitions appear more solid. Stairwells leading to upper floors feel particularly oppressive, channeling the emotional residue of decades of care, illness, and death. The hospital appears to act as a vessel for residual energy, holding on to the experiences, emotions, and memories of its past occupants. Paranormal investigators have documented extensive activity at Fallon Hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting shadows moving through corridors. Audio recorders, Hapidol recorders have picked up whispers, cries, and unexplained murmurs, and temperature sensors have detected sudden localized drops in heat. Many experts suggest that the haunting is a residual effect of the intense emotions experienced by patients and staff: fear, pain, hope, and care imprinted onto the building itself, replaying endlessly within its walls. Battle Mountain Hospital, nestled in the small town of Battle Mountain, Nevada, has stood abandoned for decades. Yet its empty halls are far from lifeless. The hospital's reputation for hauntings stems from numerous accounts of ghostly activity reported by urban explorers, locals, and paranormal investigators. Witnesses describe shadowy figures moving through the corridors, whispers echoing from empty patient rooms, sudden drops in temperature, and shadowy shapes that appear to crawl along walls and ceilings. Though the building has been closed for years, its walls seem saturated with the memories and energy of the countless patients, nurses, and doctors who once lived, worked, and sometimes died within its rooms. Every step inside the hospital serves as a reminder that Battle Mountain Hospital continues to harbor the spirits of its past. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Visitors describe seeing fleeting silhouettes moving down hallways, pausing near patient rooms, or disappearing into walls. Many of these apparitions appear to resemble former hospital staff, dressed in old nurse uniforms or doctor's coats, performing tasks that may have been part of their daily routines decades ago. One visitor recounted standing in the main corridor when a dark figure slowly appeared at the end of the hallway. It moved deliberately, as if checking on unseen patients, before fading into the shadows. Others have reported multiple figures simultaneously, moving as though tending to invisible patients, creating the unnerving sense that the hospital is still in operation, though only in spectral form. Phantom footsteps are another hallmark of the hauntings at Battle Mountain Hospital. Guests frequently hear the echo of someone walking down empty corridors, ranging from slow, deliberate steps to hurried shuffles, as if staff are moving between patient rooms or rushing to attend to emergencies that no longer exist. One investigator described walking through a second-floor ward when he distinctly heard footsteps behind him, mirroring his pace. Turning revealed no one, yet the sound continued for several steps before fading. Visitors often report hearing multiple sets of footsteps at once, moving through different wings, giving the impression that the building is alive with unseen activity. Temperature drops are common throughout the hospital. Visitors often feel sudden, localized cold spots, particularly near former patient wards or long corridors. These drops can be intense enough to raise goosebumps or make clothing feel damp, even in otherwise warm conditions. Many witnesses report that these cold drafts coincide with other paranormal phenomena, such as whispers, footsteps, or shadowy figures, suggesting that unseen presences are actively moving through the hospital. One explorer recalled entering an empty treatment room and feeling a chill sweep across the space, as if someone had just walked past. The sensation was so strong that he could see his breath in the frigid air. Despite the room's normal temperature, outside of this sudden cold spot, whispers and voices are frequently reported. Guests hear faint murmurs, indistinct words, or even urgent calls from empty rooms. These sounds often seem to originate from places that would have been occupied by patients or staff, echoing through long hallways and abandoned wards. Some whispers are soft instructions or comforting words, while others convey distress or fear. One visitor described hearing a voice say, "I can't breathe," coming from an empty patient room. The sounds are vivid enough to evoke the emotions of the past, leaving witnesses with a chilling sense of empathy for the unseen occupants still trapped within the building. Shadowy shapes moving along walls and ceilings are another eerie phenomenon. Several visitors have reported seeing indistinct figures crawl or glide across walls, sometimes appearing to bend gravity or float in impossible ways. These shapes are often accompanied by other paranormal activity, such as cold drafts or whispers, reinforcing the impression that unseen presences are actively inhabiting the hospital. One paranormal investigator described watching a shadow slowly stretch along a corridor ceiling, following him as he walked, then dissipating suddenly when he reached the stairwell. Doors moving without cause add to the unsettling environment. Patient rooms, storage closets, and administrative offices have been seen opening, closing, or creaking as if someone has just passed through. One group of explorers recounted a door swinging open at the far end of a hallway, pausing as though hesitating, then closing abruptly without explanation. This activity reinforces the perception that unseen entities continue to carry out the routines of the hospital, repeating tasks that were once part of daily life. The hospital's architecture amplifies its haunted atmosphere. Long, narrow corridors, high ceilings, and rows of identical patient rooms create natural echoes, making footsteps, whispers, and other sounds appear louder and more vivid. Cracked walls, peeling paint, and uneven floors cast shifting shadows that make fleeting apparitions seem more substantial. Stairwells leading to upper floors often feel oppressive, as if channeling the emotional residue of decades of human suffering and care. The structure itself seems to act as a conduit, holding on to the memories and energy of those who spent their lives within it. Paranormal investigations at Battle Mountain Hospital have documented extensive activity. Infrared cameras capture fleeting shadows moving through corridors. Audio recorders pick up whispers and cries with no discernible source. And temperature sensors detect sudden, localized drops in heat. Experts suggest that the hauntings may be residual energy left by the intense emotions of patients and staff, replaying over and over within the building. Winnemucca Medical Center, situated in the heart of Winnemucca, Nevada, has long been abandoned, yet it continues to draw attention from locals and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Though the hospital's doors have been locked for years, the building is far from empty. Visitors consistently report encounters with ghostly figures, phantom footsteps echoing through deserted hallways, and flickering lights that defy any logical explanation. The atmosphere within the medical center is heavy with a sense of lingering presence, as if the countless patients and staff who once filled its halls have left behind more than memories. They have left a trace of their energy, a haunting imprint that refuses to fade. Shadowy figures are the most common form of apparition reported at Winnemucca Medical Center. Visitors describe fleeting silhouettes moving down corridors, disappearing into walls, or vanishing just as they attempt to approach. Many witnesses claim these figures resemble former hospital staff, dressed in the uniforms of nurses and doctors from decades past. One urban explorer recounted walking through the second-floor patient wards when he noticed a shadowy nurse standing at the end of the hallway. As he stepped closer, the figure simply dissolved into the darkness, leaving behind the unmistakable feeling that someone or something was still performing the duties of long-forgotten patients. Others have reported multiple apparitions simultaneously, moving as if tending to invisible patients, creating a chilling illusion of a hospital still in operation, despite decades of abandonment. Phantom footsteps are another recurring phenomenon. Guests frequently hear the sound of shoes pacing down empty corridors, sometimes slow and deliberate, other times hurried and urgent. One visitor described walking through the former surgical wing when he distinctly heard footsteps behind him, matching his own pace. When he turned, no one was there, yet the footsteps continued for several steps before fading into silence. Others have reported hearing multiple sets of footsteps simultaneously, seemingly moving through different wings at once, giving the impression that the building is alive with unseen activity. Unexplained cold spots are another hallmark of the hauntings at Winmucca Medical Center. Visitors often experience sudden, localized drops in temperature, particularly near old patient rooms or long, empty corridors. These cold drafts are sometimes so intense that they cause shivers or make clothing feel damp. Many witnesses note that the drops coincide with other phenomena, such as phantom footsteps or fleeting shadows, enhancing the eerie sensation that unseen presences are actively observing or interacting with anyone who enters. One investigator described stepping into an empty ward and feeling icy air sweep across the room as though someone had just passed, even though all windows and doors were firmly closed. Whispers and faint murmurs are commonly reported throughout the hospital. Guests frequently hear voices emanating from empty patient rooms or hallways, sometimes indistinct and sometimes partially understandable. These murmurs can range from comforting words to urgent calls for help, echoing as if the building itself is replaying moments from its past. One visitor described hearing a faint conversation between two unseen nurses, discussing patient care as if they were still attending to the sick. Other visitors report hearing cries of distress, particularly in wards that were once heavily used. These auditory phenomena are vivid enough to create an emotional connection with the past, leaving witnesses with a profound sense of empathy for the unseen spirits lingering within the hospital. Flickering lights add to the unsettling atmosphere. Hallway lights, emergency fixtures, and ceiling lamps often flicker without any electrical cause, sometimes in response to movement or in areas where no one is present. Visitors have reported standing in a room when lights suddenly dim and brighten repeatedly, creating sharp shadows that make the apparitions seem more tangible. Combined with phantom footsteps, whispers, and cold spots, these flickering lights heighten the sense of a building alive with unseen energy. Doors moving on their own are another reported occurrence. Patient rooms, offices, and storage closets have been seen opening, closing, or creaking inexplicably. One group of visitors recalled a door swinging open at the far end of a corridor, pausing as if hesitant, and then slamming shut without anyone in sight. Such activity reinforces the impression that unseen presences continue to carry out tasks that were once routine, repeating the daily motions of a hospital long abandoned. The architecture of Winmucca Medical Center amplifies its haunted reputation. Long corridors, high ceilings, and repetitive rows of patient rooms create natural echoes that make footsteps, whispers, and other sounds more pronounced. Peeling paint, cracked walls, and worn floors cast shifting shadows that often give fleeting apparitions an almost tangible form. Stairwells and upper floors, particularly, evoke a sense of weight and presence, channeling the emotional residue of decades of care, illness, and death. The building itself seems to act as a repository for residual energy, amplifying and preserving the impressions left by those who spent their lives within its walls. Paranormal investigations at Winmucca Medical Center have documented extensive activity. Infrared cameras capture fleeting shadows, audio recorders pick up indistinct conversations and cries, and temperature sensors detect sudden localized drops in heat. Many investigators suggest that these manifestations are residual energy left behind by the hospital's former occupants, replaying endlessly in the corridors, wards, and rooms. Lovelock Hospital, located in the quiet town of Lovelock, Nevada, has long stood abandoned, yet it remains alive with the presence of the past. Once a bustling medical facility serving the local community, the hospital's corridors now lie empty, its rooms silent. But the energy of those who walked its halls decades ago lingers. Visitors and paranormal investigators report an array of spectral phenomena, from shadowy figures gliding through the hallways to objects moving inexplicably and sudden, chilling gusts of cold air that seem to follow them from room to room. The atmosphere within Lovelock Hospital is thick with the echoes of lives once lived and the residual memories of those who never left, making it one of Nevada's most intriguing haunted locations. Shadowy figures are the most commonly reported manifestations. Witnesses describe fleeting silhouettes that appear at the end of long corridors, standing silently in doorways or moving along walls before vanishing without warning. Many of these apparitions resemble hospital staff from decades past, dressed in nurses' uniforms, doctors' coats, or patient gowns. One visitor recalled walking through the second-floor ward when a dark figure appeared at the end of the hall, seeming to examine an empty patient room before fading into the shadows. Others have reported seeing multiple figures simultaneously, moving in ways that suggest they are carrying out the daily routines of a hospital still in operation, a chilling reenactment of a life that has long since ended. Phantom footsteps are another hallmark of Lovelock Hospital's haunting. Guests frequently hear the sound of someone walking along empty corridors, sometimes slow and deliberate, other times hurried and urgent. One paranormal investigator described hearing footsteps echoing behind her in a hallway where no one was present. As she paused and turned, the footsteps continued, pacing alongside her for several steps before fading away. Visitors have also reported hearing multiple sets of footsteps simultaneously in different wings, giving the impression that the building is still occupied by unseen staff and patients going about their daily lives. Cold spots are particularly pervasive throughout the hospital. Sudden localized drops in temperature are reported in former patient wards, stairwells, and long hallways. Visitors often experience goosebumps or a shiver that seems to pass over them with no logical source. Many report that these cold drafts coincide with other paranormal phenomena, such as shadows or whispers, intensifying the eerie sensation that unseen presences are actively moving through the hospital. One explorer recounted stepping into a former examination room and feeling a frigid gust sweep across the space, as if an unseen hand had just brushed past. Whispers, murmurs, and faint cries add another layer to the hospital's haunting. Guests report hearing voices coming from empty rooms or distant hallways, sometimes indistinct, sometimes calling out patient names or murmuring instructions. One witness described hearing a soft, anguished plea from an empty ward, a voice repeating, "Please, help me," as if a patient was reliving their final moments. These auditory experiences are so vivid that visitors often feel an emotional connection to the unseen inhabitants of Lovelock Hospital, further reinforcing the sense that the past refuses to remain silent. Objects moving on their own are also frequently observed. Doors to patient rooms, supply closets, and offices have been seen opening, closing, or creaking without cause. One group of visitors reported a clipboard sliding off a counter and falling to the floor, while other items in the same room remained undisturbed. Such activity suggests that unseen forces are still performing tasks that were once routine, repeating the motions of daily life long after the hospital ceased to function. The hospital's architecture amplifies the haunting. Long, narrow corridors and rows of identical patient rooms create natural echoes, intensifying footsteps, whispers, and other sounds. Peeling paint, cracked walls, and worn floors cast shifting shadows that make fleeting apparitions appear more substantial. Stairwells and upper floors convey an oppressive atmosphere, channeling the emotional residue of decades of care, illness, and death. The building seems to act as a vessel for residual energy, preserving the emotional imprint of those who lived, worked, and sometimes died within its walls. Paranormal investigators have documented extensive activity at Lovelock Hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting shadows moving along corridors. Audio devices have recorded whispers and cries from empty rooms. and temperature sensors have detected sudden, localized drops in heat. Many experts suggest that the haunting may be a form of residual energy, a replay of intense emotions left behind by patients and staff who spent their lives within the hospital. Battle Creek Medical, once a bustling healthcare facility in the heart of Battle Creek, now stands silent and abandoned. The hospital's empty corridors, long deserted wards, and vacant examination rooms are a stark reminder of its past life. Yet the building is far from lifeless. For decades, visitors and paranormal enthusiasts have reported a variety of unexplained phenomena, from shadowy figures gliding through hallways to phantom footsteps echoing across tile floors. Cold drafts seem to follow anyone walking through the empty halls, and lights flicker with no electrical cause, creating an atmosphere thick with the echoes of a bygone era. The haunting of Battle Creek Medical is both pervasive and unsettling, drawing those intrigued by the spectral traces of the past. Shadowy figures are the most frequently reported sightings at Battle Creek Medical. Witnesses often describe dark, humanoid shapes moving just beyond the edge of vision or disappearing behind doors before they can be closely observed. Some appear to resemble former hospital staff, clad in nurses' uniforms or doctors' coats, while others take on the vague form of patients, moving slowly along corridors or standing silently at the end of hallways. One urban explorer recounted walking through the surgical wing when a shadowy figure appeared near a doorway, pausing briefly as though performing an unseen task, then vanishing as he approached. Multiple visitors have reported seeing several apparitions at once, moving through different wings, giving the unsettling impression that the hospital is still active despite decades of abandonment. Phantom footsteps are another hallmark of the hospital's paranormal activity. These footsteps often echo throughout empty corridors, sometimes slow and measured, other times hurried and panicked. A visitor described walking down the third-floor hallway when she heard footsteps pacing behind her, matching her own steps exactly. When she turned, no one was present, yet the sound persisted for several moments before fading. Many have noted that the footsteps seem to move independently of anyone present, sometimes appearing to cross the floor above or below, as if unseen inhabitants continue their routines across the deserted building. Cold spots are pervasive throughout Battle Creek Medical, particularly in areas that were once patient wards or surgical suites. Sudden, localized drops in temperature have been reported by numerous visitors, often accompanied by a tangible feeling of pressure or unease. These cold drafts are sometimes so intense that they cause shivers or goosebumps, as though invisible presences are brushing past. Paranormal investigators have recorded these sudden temperature changes using thermal sensors, noting that they often coincide with other unusual phenomena such as shadowy figures or unexplained noises. Auditory experiences are a common aspect of the hospital's haunting. Visitors frequently report faint whispers, cries, or murmurs echoing through empty rooms and hallways. Some claim to hear patient names being called, while others describe hearing conversations between unseen nurses or doctors. One visitor recounted hearing a low, urgent voice call out, "Help me, please," coming from a room that had been empty for decades. These auditory phenomena often produce a chilling emotional response, giving the impression that the building is replaying the final moments, concerns, or memories of those who once occupied it. Flickering lights contribute significantly to the hospital's eerie atmosphere. Hallway fixtures, emergency lights, and ceiling lamps have been reported to dim and brighten without any apparent cause. Many visitors experience the lights reacting when they enter a room or move down a corridor, casting long shadows and giving fleeting apparitions a more tangible presence. One paranormal investigator noted that in certain areas, lights would flicker violently in response to movement, as if the building itself was aware of being observed, adding to the pervasive sense of unease. Doors moving on their own are another recurring phenomenon. Patient rooms, offices, and supply closets have been seen opening and closing without human intervention. Visitors often describe doors creaking open slowly, pausing mid-swing, then closing abruptly as if an invisible hand had moved them. In some cases, These door movements appear to correspond with other paranormal activity, such as flickering lights or the sudden appearance of a shadowy figure, reinforcing the impression that unseen presences continue to interact with the physical world. The architectural layout of Battle Creek Medical amplifies its haunted reputation. Long corridors, identical rows of patient rooms, and high ceilings create natural echoes that intensify footsteps, whispers, and other sounds. Worn floors, peeling paint, and cracked walls cast shifting shadows, which often transform fleeting movements into seemingly tangible apparitions. Stairwells and upper floors, in particular, have been described as oppressive, conveying the weight of decades of human activity, care, and sometimes suffering. The building itself acts as a vessel for residual energy, preserving the emotional imprint of those who spent their lives within its walls. Paranormal investigations have documented extensive activity at Battle Creek Medical. Infrared cameras capture fleeting shadows, audio devices record whispers and cries, and temperature sensors detect sudden drops in heat. Many experts suggest that the hauntings may be residual energy left behind by the patients and staff who once lived and worked within the hospital, endlessly replaying their routines, concerns, and final moments. Carlin Hospital, situated in the small town of Carlin, Nevada, stands as a silent sentinel to decades of human life, care, and loss. Though abandoned for many years, the hospital remains far from lifeless. Visitors, urban explorers, and paranormal investigators frequently report experiences that defy explanation. Shadowy figures pacing deserted hallways, faint cries echoing from empty wards, and sudden bone-chilling cold spots that appear without warning. The building itself seems to retain the energy of those who once walked its corridors, creating an atmosphere that is as unsettling as it is compelling. The hauntings of Carlin Hospital are multifaceted, combining visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena that together make it one of Nevada's most storied haunted sites. Shadowy figures are perhaps the most frequently observed phenomenon. Visitors often describe dark, humanoid shapes moving through hallways or lingering in doorways, vanishing the moment they are approached. Some apparitions resemble the hospital's former staff, clad in nurses' uniforms or doctors' coats, while others take on the vague, indistinct shapes of patients. One visitor recounted walking through the second-floor surgical wing when a shadowy figure appeared near the end of the corridor. The figure seemed to pause as if checking a patient before slowly disappearing into the darkness. Others have reported multiple figures moving simultaneously, suggesting that the hospital is still occupied by its unseen residents, endlessly repeating the routines of a facility that has long since closed. Phantom footsteps are another hallmark of Carlin Hospital's spectral activity. The sound of pacing or hurried footsteps is commonly reported throughout the building, echoing unnervingly along empty corridors and across tiled floors. One investigator described walking through the former pediatric wing when the unmistakable sound of running feet followed him from room to room. When he turned to confront the source, no one was present. Often, these footsteps appear to move independently of any visitor, sometimes ascending or descending stairwells, giving the impression that unseen inhabitants continue to patrol the building long after its closure. Cold spots are a pervasive and unnerving element of the hospital's haunt. Sudden, localized drops in temperature are often reported in former patient wards, hallways, and examination rooms. Visitors experience a distinct chill, sometimes accompanied by goosebumps or shivers, as if invisible presences are brushing past. Paranormal investigators have documented these temperature fluctuations using thermal sensors, noting that the cold spots frequently coincide with other activity, such as shadowy figures or distant cries, further intensifying the building's eerie atmosphere. Auditory phenomena are a common aspect of Carlin Hospital's haunting. Witnesses report faint cries, whispers, and murmurs echoing through empty rooms and corridors. Some claim to hear patient names being called, while others describe indistinct conversations between unseen nurses or doctors. One visitor recounted hearing a soft, agonized plea coming from an abandoned ward, a voice repeating, "I can't breathe." help me," creating an emotional connection that is difficult to ignore. These auditory experiences suggest that the hospital retains the emotional residue of past patients and staff, replaying moments of fear, suffering, and care long after the building ceased to function. Doors moving on their own and objects shifting inexplicably are also frequently reported. Visitors have seen room doors slowly swing open or slam shut without explanation, supply cabinets open and close, and items like medical charts or clipboards move without human contact. One group of urban explorers witnessed a medical trolley roll across an empty ward, stopping abruptly as if guided by an unseen hand. Such activity gives the impression that the spirits of Carlin Hospital continued to perform tasks that were once part of daily life, maintaining routines that have long since ended. The hospital's architecture amplifies its haunting. Long corridors, high ceilings, and uniform rows of patient rooms create natural echoes that intensify footsteps, whispers, and other sounds. Peeling paint, cracked walls, and worn floors cast shifting shadows, which can make fleeting apparitions appear more substantial. Stairwells and upper floors convey an oppressive atmosphere, channeling decades of human emotion and activity. The building itself seems to act as a vessel for residual energy, preserving the memories and experiences of those who lived, worked, and sometimes died within its walls. Paranormal investigators have documented extensive activity at Carlin Hospital. Infrared cameras have captured fleeting shadows moving along hallways. Audio devices have recorded faint cries and whispers, and temperature sensors have detected sudden, unexplained drops in heat. Many experts suggest that the hauntings may be a form of residual energy, a replay of the intense emotions left behind by patients and staff. Some believe that the spirits of those who died within the hospital's walls are unable to move on, endlessly reliving their final moments and maintaining the routines they knew in life. Lovelock Sanitarium, perched quietly on the outskirts of Lovelock, Nevada, is a place where the echoes of the past refuse to fade. Abandoned for decades, the building still draws the curious and the daring, those eager to experience its unsettling history firsthand. Once a facility for patients battling both physical and mental illness, the sanitarium was a place of care, despair, and countless untold stories. Now, it stands as a monument to lives interrupted and souls unsettled. Visitors report a range of paranormal phenomena, from shadowy figures gliding through hallways to whispers emanating from empty rooms, creating an atmosphere thick with lingering energy and unspoken memories. Shadowy figures are perhaps the most commonly reported phenomena at Lovelock Sanitarium. Witnesses frequently describe dark, indistinct shapes moving along corridors, pausing in doorways, or disappearing behind walls before they can be closely observed. Some apparitions appear humanoid, resembling former patients or staff members, while others are less defined, an impression of movement rather than a solid form. One visitor recounted walking through the former patient wing when a shadow seemed to follow him along the corridor, halting at each doorway as if checking on invisible patients. When he turned to confront it, the figure vanished, leaving only the cold emptiness of the hallway behind. Multiple witnesses have described seeing these figures simultaneously, suggesting that the sanitarium is still populated by unseen residents, replaying their routines and moments of distress long after the facility closed. Flickering lights contribute heavily to the sanitarium's eerie atmosphere. Hallway lights, once powered and now long abandoned, occasionally flicker and dim as visitors move through the building. Some witnesses have reported entire rooms becoming illuminated for brief moments, casting shifting shadows across peeling walls and worn floors, only for the light to vanish moments later. This interplay of light and shadow often creates the sensation of figures moving in the corners of vision, adding to the pervasive sense of being observed by unseen eyes. One paranormal investigator noted that the lights seemed to respond to movement, as though the building itself were aware of those intruding on its silent halls. Auditory phenomena are another defining feature of Lovelock Sanitarium's haunting. Faint whispers, cries, and murmurs echo through empty rooms, corridors, and stairwells. Some visitors report hearing patient names being softly called, while others describe indistinct conversations between nurses and doctors long gone. A particularly chilling experience occurred when a visitor heard the desperate plea, "Please, help me," coming from an empty treatment room, the voice reverberating through the building in a way that felt both near and impossibly distant. These auditory experiences suggest that the sanitarium retains the emotional residue of its past, replaying moments of fear, sorrow, and care as if frozen in time. Phantom footsteps are also commonly reported. These sounds vary from slow, deliberate pacing to hurried, panicked running, echoing through the long, empty corridors. Visitors often describe footsteps that seem to follow them, perfectly synchronized with their own movements, only to vanish when confronted. Some report hearing footsteps from above or below, suggesting activity in areas no longer accessible or maintained. These auditory traces create a tangible sense that the sanitarium remains inhabited. Its long-abandoned halls, still patrolled by unseen presences. Cold spots and sudden drops in temperature are frequently experienced by those entering the building. Certain rooms, particularly former patient wards and treatment areas, are noted for intense chills that appear without warning. Visitors describe goosebumps, shivers, and a sensation of pressure, as if invisible entities brush past their bodies. Paranormal investigators using thermal sensors have confirmed these fluctuations, often coinciding with other reported phenomena, such as shadows or whispers, further heightening the sense of unease. Objects moving on their own are a less common, but equally unnerving aspect of the sanitarium as hauntings. Doors have been observed opening and closing without human intervention, and items such as medical charts, wheelchairs, and utensils have shifted inexplicably. On one occasion, a visitor noted a wheelchair slowly roll across an empty hallway, halting abruptly as if guided by an unseen hand. Such activity reinforces the idea that the spirits of Lovelock Sanitarium continue to interact with the physical environment, maintaining routines and tasks that have long ceased. The building's architecture amplifies the haunting. Long corridors, uniform patient rooms, and high ceilings produce natural echoes that intensify footsteps, whispers, and other sounds. Worn floors, cracked walls, and peeling paint cast shifting shadows that can transform fleeting glimpses into seemingly tangible forms. Stairwells and upper floors are particularly oppressive, channeling decades of human emotion, suffering, and caretaking. The sanitarium itself appears to act as a vessel for residual energy, preserving the memories and experiences of those who lived, worked, and died within its walls. Paranormal investigations have documented extensive activity at Lovelock Sanitarium. Infrared cameras capture fleeting shadows, audio devices record faint whispers and cries, and thermal sensors detect sudden, unexplained temperature drops. Experts suggest the hauntings may represent residual energy, a replay of intense emotions left behind by patients and staff. Others believe that the spirits of those who never recovered or died within the sanitarium are trapped, endlessly repeating their experiences and unable to move on. Beatty Hospital, located in the quiet town of Beatty, Nevada, is a place where time seems to have stopped, yet the echoes of the past remain vividly alive. Though the hospital has been abandoned for decades, it is far from empty. Those who dare to enter its decaying halls often report experiences that defy explanation, from shadowy figures moving along the corridors to the faint sounds of cries and whispers from rooms long vacant. The hospital, once a center of care and healing, has become a repository for restless spirits, each with stories of pain, fear, or unfinished business, lingering in the corners and empty wards. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena at Beatty Hospital. Visitors describe seeing dark shapes glide silently across hallways or appear in doorways before vanishing without warning. Some figures resemble hospital staff, dressed in the uniforms of nurses or doctors from decades past, while others appear as indistinct human forms, suggesting patients who never left the building in life or in death. One witness recounted walking through the former surgical wing when a shadow seemed to follow him, pausing at each doorway as if checking on unseen patients. Moments later, the figure dissolved into the darkness, leaving nothing but the oppressive silence of the abandoned hospital behind. Multiple visitors have reported seeing these apparitions simultaneously, hinting at a persistent presence that remains tied to the hospital's history. Phantom footsteps are another hallmark of Beatty Hospital's haunting. Visitors frequently report the sound of pacing or hurried running through empty corridors, sometimes perfectly synchronized with their own movements, only to vanish when investigated. These footsteps are often heard in areas no longer structurally safe, suggesting that the spirits continue to traverse the building as if it were still active. Some report hearing the clatter of surgical carts or the tapping of shoes on the hallway floors, adding a layer of auditory unease to the visual apparitions. The combination of sound and shadow gives the impression that the hospital is never truly empty, and that its ghostly occupants continue their routines long after the building has been abandoned. Auditory phenomena extend beyond footsteps. Visitors often report hearing faint cries, whispers, and murmurs echoing from empty rooms. Some have heard names called softly, while others describe unintelligible conversations between invisible staff and patients. One chilling experience involved a visitor hearing a plaintive voice repeatedly whisper, "I can't breathe," coming from a long-abandoned patient ward. These auditory experiences seem to preserve the emotional residue of the hospital, replaying moments of fear, suffering, and care in a loop that is palpable to those who enter. Cold spots are another pervasive element of Beatty Hospital's paranormal activity. Sudden drops in temperature are commonly reported, particularly in former patient wards and treatment areas. Visitors describe a chill that rises quickly, sometimes accompanied by goosebumps, shivers, or the feeling of unseen hands brushing past. Paranormal investigators have confirmed these fluctuations with thermal cameras, noting that cold spots often coincide with sightings of shadows or the sounds of whispers and footsteps, creating a layered and unsettling experience. Objects moving on their own add to the hospital's eerie reputation. Doors have been observed swinging open or slamming shut without explanation, and items like medical charts, wheelchairs, and small equipment have shifted inexplicably. One group of visitors witnessed a hospital bed slowly roll down a hallway before stopping abruptly, as though guided by an invisible hand. Such activity reinforces the idea that the spirits of Beatty Hospital are not merely residual but interactive, replaying routines or acting out the moments they once experienced. The architecture of the hospital itself amplifies its haunting. Long corridors, uniform patient rooms, and high ceilings create natural echoes that intensify footsteps, whispers, and cries. Peeling paint, cracked walls, and worn floors cast shadows that can transform fleeting glimpses into seemingly tangible figures. Stairwells and upper floors often feel particularly oppressive, channeling the accumulated weight of decades of human emotion and activity. The building acts as a vessel for these energies, preserving memories of those who lived, worked, and died within its walls. Paranormal investigators have documented extensive activity at Beatty Hospital. Infrared cameras capture fleeting shadows moving along corridors, audio recorders pick up whispers and cries, and thermal sensors detect unexplained temperature drops. Many experts suggest that the hauntings are a form of residual energy, a replay of intense emotions left behind by patients and staff. Others believe that some spirits are sentient, unable to move on, endlessly reliving their final moments and maintaining the routines of the hospital as it once operated. Silver Peak Medical, located in the remote reaches of Esmeralda County, Nevada, stands as a silent sentinel to the past. Once a functioning medical facility, it provided care to the residents of this sparsely populated region. But over the years, it fell into disuse, leaving behind only the echoes of lives that passed through its halls. Though the building is long abandoned, those who venture inside or near its crumbling walls often report unsettling experiences. From ghostly figures gliding through corridors to phantom voices calling out from deserted rooms, the facility has gained a reputation as one of the most haunted locations in the county, drawing paranormal enthusiasts, urban explorers, and those seeking a glimpse of the otherworldly. Shadowy figures are a common sight at Silver Peak Medical. Visitors describe indistinct human shapes appearing in hallways or lingering near the entrances of abandoned wards. Some figures resemble hospital staff from decades past, dressed in uniforms that hint at an era long gone, while others are vague silhouettes that vanish when approached. One visitor recounted walking down the old main corridor when a dark figure suddenly appeared at the far end, seeming to pause and watch before dissolving into the shadows. Others have reported seeing multiple figures simultaneously, as if the hospital is still populated by the souls of patients and caregivers, replaying moments of life and death frozen in time. Phantom footsteps are another hallmark of the hauntings at Silver Peak Medical. Visitors often hear the sound of pacing or hurried running echoing through empty corridors, sometimes perfectly synchronized with their own movements, only to stop abruptly when investigated. The footsteps are frequently heard in areas no longer structurally safe, suggesting that the spirits continue to traverse the building as if it were still fully operational. Some have described hearing the subtle creaking of hospital beds or the clatter of instruments moving in areas long abandoned, adding to the pervasive sense that the facility remains alive in a spectral sense. Auditory phenomena extend beyond footsteps. Many visitors report hearing faint cries, whispers, and murmurs echoing from abandoned wards. Some claim to hear names called softly, while others hear indistinct conversations between nurses and patients long gone. One chilling experience involved a visitor hearing the desperate plea, "Help me, please," coming from an empty patient room, the voice fading in and out as if struggling to reach the living. These auditory echoes suggest that the hospital retains the emotional imprint of its past, replaying moments of fear, suffering, and care for those who enter. Cold spots are also commonly reported within Silver Peak Medical. Sudden drops in temperature appear without warning, particularly in former patient wards and treatment areas. Visitors describe goosebumps, shivers, and a sensation of pressure, as if invisible hands are brushing against them. Paranormal investigators equipped with thermal sensors have confirmed these fluctuations, noting that cold spots often coincide with sightings of shadows or the sounds of whispers and footsteps, creating an immersive and chilling experience. Objects moving on their own contribute further to the eerie reputation of the hospital. Doors have been observed opening and closing without explanation, and items such as medical charts, wheelchairs, and instruments have been reported shifting inexplicably. One group of visitors witnessed a wheelchair slowly roll across a hallway before stopping suddenly, as though guided by an unseen hand. These incidents suggest that the spirits of Silver Peak Medical continue to interact with their environment, perhaps attempting to recreate routines from when the hospital was operational. The architecture of Silver Peak Medical amplifies its haunting. Long, narrow corridors, uniform patient rooms, and high ceilings create natural echoes that intensify footsteps, whispers, and cries. Peeling paint, cracked walls, and worn floors cast shadows that can transform fleeting glimpses into seemingly tangible figures. Stairwells and upper floors feel particularly oppressive, channeling decades of human emotion, suffering, and caregiving. The building itself seems to act as a vessel for residual energy, preserving the memories of those who lived, worked, and died within its walls. Paranormal investigators have documented extensive activity at Silver Peak Medical. Infrared cameras capture fleeting shadows along corridors, audio recorders pick up faint whispers and cries, and thermal sensors detect sudden, unexplained temperature drops. Some experts suggest that the hauntings represent residual energy, a replay of intense emotional experiences left behind by patients and staff. Others believe that the spirits may be sentient, trapped, and unable to move on, endlessly replaying their final moments and daily routines within the hospital. Austin Hospital, located in the heart of Austin, is a building steeped in both history and mystery. Long after its wards closed and the bustling activity of staff and patients ceased, the hospital has refused to fall entirely silent. Those who step inside or even near its looming structure at night often report experiences that defy explanation. Phantom footsteps echo down the empty corridors. Distant whispers drift through abandoned wards, and shadowy figures appear to move with purpose. as if the hospital itself is alive with the memories of those who once walked its halls. The hospital's reputation as a haunted site has drawn both curiosity seekers and paranormal investigators, all hoping to glimpse or record the lingering spirits of Austin's past. Visitors often describe seeing shadowy figures gliding silently along hallways, sometimes stopping to peer from doorways or vanish into walls. Many apparitions resemble hospital staff from decades past, dressed in traditional nurse uniforms or doctor's coats, their movements precise as if attending to unseen patients. Other forms appear more indistinct, vague silhouettes that flicker at the edge of vision, leaving a chilling impression that the hospital is never truly empty. One visitor recounted walking down a long corridor when a dark figure appeared at the far end, its outline clearly human but blurred at the edges. The figure seemed to watch silently before fading into the shadows, leaving the witness shaken and aware of the lingering presence within the building. Phantom footsteps are one of the most frequently reported phenomena at Austin Hospital. Visitors describe the sound of pacing, hurried movement, or the rhythmic clatter of shoes across hallways. Sometimes the footsteps follow the observer, echoing from behind and matching their own pace, only to vanish when the corridor is checked. In other cases, the sounds come from stairwells or upper floors that are structurally unsafe, suggesting that the spirits continue to navigate the hospital as if it was still fully operational. These persistent footsteps give the sense that the hospital remains populated by invisible figures, bound to the routines and spaces of its past. Auditory phenomena extend far beyond footsteps. Many who explore Austin Hospital report faint cries, murmurs, and whispers drifting from empty wards. Some visitors hear names softly called, as if a nurse or doctor is summoning a patient. Others report fragmented conversations, indistinct but emotionally charged, echoing from rooms long abandoned. One chilling experience involved hearing a desperate plea, "Please, help me," repeated in a hauntingly soft voice from a room where no living person had been for years. These auditory manifestations seem to carry the emotional weight of past events, preserving echoes of fear, pain, and care within the hospital's walls. Cold spots are a frequent companion to the hospital's other phenomena. Sudden drops in temperature are reported throughout the building, often in patient wards, hallways, and treatment rooms. Visitors describe goosebumps, shivers, and the sensation of an invisible hand brushing past. Paranormal investigators equipped with thermal sensors have confirmed these temperature fluctuations, noting that cold spots often coincide with sightings of shadowy figures or the sound of whispers, amplifying the unsettling atmosphere and reinforcing the presence of lingering spirits. Objects moving inexplicably contribute to the hospital's eerie reputation. Doors have been known to swing open or slam shut without cause, while items such as medical charts, wheelchairs, and equipment occasionally shift on their own. Witnesses have reported a hospital cart rolling slowly down a corridor before stopping suddenly, as though guided by an unseen hand. These interactions suggest that the spirits at Austin Hospital are not merely residual echoes, but may actively engage with the environment, recreating routines or attempting to communicate with the living. The hospital's architecture amplifies its haunting. Long corridors, uniform patient rooms, and high ceilings create natural echoes that magnify footsteps, whispers, and cries. Peeling paint, cracked walls, and worn floors cast shadows that make fleeting movements appear more substantial than they are. Stairwells and upper floors feel especially oppressive, channeling decades of human emotion, care, and suffering. The building itself seems to preserve the energy of those who lived, worked, and died there, making the very structure a vessel for lingering memories and spirits. Paranormal investigators have documented extensive activity within Austin Hospital. Infrared cameras capture fleeting shadows gliding through hallways, audio recorders pick up whispers and faint cries, and thermal sensors detect sudden temperature drops. Some experts suggest the hauntings are residual, replaying moments of intense emotion left behind by patients and staff. Others theorize that some spirits are conscious and trapped, endlessly reliving their final days and maintaining the routines of a hospital that no longer functions in the living world. And there you have it, 25 abandoned and haunted hospitals in Nevada, where spirits linger, shadowy figures roam, and the echoes of pain and lost hope still resonate through empty halls. These abandoned corridors remind us that some places never truly close, and some souls never leave. If this journey into Nevada's haunted hospitals gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another ghostly tale. Until next time, tread carefully and listen closely, because some spirits remain forever bound to the halls where life once thrived.